Penelope, an ordinary village girl, discovers that she is the youngest daughter of a duke who disappeared 6 years ago. Living as a commoner, Penelope returns to the duke's family. This becomes a challenge for her. In her new surroundings, Penelope interacts with various characters, learning who she can trust. A fake lady appears, taking Penelope's place. The real heroine has to fight for her place. Penelope overcomes hardship and injustice, showing determination and inner strength. She is kicked out of her home, but she decides to fight for her destiny, which becomes a turning point. At a banquet, Penelope behaves inappropriately, which causes judgment and conflict. Penelope accepts the challenge and fights the false lady to regain her place in the Duke's family. The story reaches a climax with Penelope defeating the villain and restoring justice. She finds happiness, love, and acceptance, proving that any adversity can be overcome. Penelope loses her voice and tries to figure out if it is a dream or reality, feeling confused. A mysterious man appears, increasing her anxiety about what has happened. He orders her to answer a question, but Penelope doesn't realize where she is or who the man is. In desperation, Penelope utters words she did not expect, realizing that she is not in control of herself. The man asks questions and she feels pressured and confused, unable to find an answer. The man interrupts her, stating that no apology is needed, increasing her fear and guilt. The man forbids Penelope from leaving the room and appearing at the banquet, which plunges her into terror. She cannot remember what happened and desperately searches for answers, not realizing her guilt. A man calls her Penelope Eckhart, which leaves her shocked and misunderstood. She is told that she is disqualified from being called Eckhart, which confuses her completely. Penelope glared at her interlocutor, feeling anger and sadness at being ignored. She couldn't believe the accusation and expressed her incomprehension as to why she was considered insane. The interlocutor looked at her with contempt, noticing that she had gotten what she deserved. She felt a deep shock at the accusation, convincing herself that it was not about her. There were whispers in the crowd about Penelope, claiming that her temper was irritating. The crowd discussed her failure in her attempt to become a main character, ruining her reputation. One opponent called her a villain, which filled her heart with fear and pain. In desperation, she screamed her name, trying to regain control of the situation. The bright scene contrasted with her gloomy thoughts, reminding her of her happy childhood. With a photograph in her hands, she remembered the loss and grief, preparing for a new life. Her older brothers reminded her of the importance of caring for her sister despite their different mothers. Her mother and she lived in a one-room apartment while her brothers enjoyed luxuries. After 6 years, the heroine returns home, ready to start a new life. She pondered why her father did not protect her from the cruelty of her brothers. The brothers only cared about the inheritance, making life difficult for her. Despite her worries, she felt relieved at her freedom. She apologized to herself for the suffering she had endured, intent on making a fresh start. Remembering her brother's bullying, she realized that her father did not respond to their cruelty. She went to university to escape from her family and find a new life. The heroine realized that she achieved her goal, freeing herself from family oppression. Dark times were in the past, and she was determined to study and become happy. University became a place of new challenges and acquaintances, discussing successes and difficulties. The heroine discussed whether it was possible to pass a difficult exam without additional resources. Her curiosity is fueled by discussions of the popular game everyone is talking about. Skeptical, she decides to try the game to understand its popularity. She downloads the game despite her doubts so that she won't be left out of the conversations. The game offers 2 modes, and she decides to start with the regular one to understand the rules. The bright world of the game welcomes her, and she explores the virtual landscape, realizing that there are adventures ahead. The game tells the story of an 18-year-old girl separated from her family 6 years ago. After years of separation, the girl is reunited with her family again, ready for new events. The heroine must conquer the male characters and get rid of the villain for riches and fame. She delights in the game, anticipating plot twists and romantic scenes. 3 hours later, she realizes that she has become engrossed in the game without noticing how time has passed. The heroine notes the high quality of the game and feels completely immersed in the virtual world. The game reminds her of her own life, which increases her interest in the playthrough. In the game, the heroine lives in poverty until she returns to the ducal house, reminding her of her fate. She recalls being taken away by her biological father, evoking mixed feelings. She also has older brothers in the game, which seems amusing and makes you want to tame them. In normal mode, the sympathy of all targets is 30%, which is too easy for her. She decides that this mode should be called easy, but continues to play. The heroine has finished all the storylines and is interested in the hidden ending. Upon learning the cost of the hidden ending, she was shocked at the price. She remembered the hard mode and decides to unlock all the endings in that mode as well. Despite being tired, she keeps playing to see the whole story. In her right mind, she wouldn't have decided to do this, but she finds it hard to stop. In hard mode, the game is played on behalf of the false Duchess Penelope Eckhart. It's hard to get sympathy in hard mode, and every wrong choice drastically reduces it. Playing as Penelope, the heroine sees that she has done nothing wrong, raising questions. She hopes to survive the hard mode and understand Penelope's story. Originally wanted a hidden ending, but now wants to understand Penelope's fate. The heroine reflects that the villain did nothing wrong and wants to see her happy. In the normal mode, the protagonist easily achieves love while the villainess remains in the shadows. The villain only faces misfortune, making her life complicated and dramatic. In hard mode, everything ends in death for the villain despite her efforts. The heroine with black hair faces indifference from her father, increasing her loneliness. One of her brothers tells the heroine that she is not part of this family, undermining her confidence. The image of the villainess with pink hair reflects the heroine's struggle with hardship and injustice. The heroine vows to pursue a happy ending for the villainess despite her suffering. The heroine has been trying to complete the game all night but is unable to get any ending. She decides to start the game over and continue until she reaches the villain's ending. Upon waking up, she finds herself in a new place, realizing that she is in the body of another person. A brown-haired servant calls her my lady, increasing her bewilderment. Recalling waking up in an unfamiliar place, the heroine tries to understand what is happening. She prays, hoping it is a dream, but realizes she has become the villain of the game. Looking in the mirror, she sees the image of Penelope and tries to get used to her new role. Suddenly, she feels a sharp pain in her arm, noticing strange needle marks. The heroine realizes that her new body has been manipulated and decides to figure it out. She examines her arm anxiously, wondering about the meaning of the marks. Penelope recognizes the servant as a character from the game, causing her surprise. The servant caught Penelope's attention, causing her to become emotional and suspicious. The servant calms Penelope by offering to wash her face, but she feels confused. The cold water in the basin surprised Penelope, causing her suspicion and bewilderment. Penelope realizes the cruelty of reality, unspecified in the game, which disturbs her. She was shocked by the death scene, causing great confusion. The servant reminded Penelope of the uselessness of some of the game's details, causing her to think. The servant reports breakfast ready, but Penelope is in deep thought. Penelope slowly dips her hand into the cold water, remembering the abuse. She decides to act differently, keeping her inner strength and calm. A servant offers Penelope something to eat, which makes her grateful and relieved. Seeing the food, Penelope is shocked by its disgusting appearance and cannot believe she has to eat it. Penelope recalls having to replay this scene twice at the beginning of her heavy regimen. She realizes that each answer choice leads to a different consequence, and twice she has already chosen the wrong ones. Of the 3 answer choices, 2 of them turn out to be traps. Penelope is confused, not knowing which option to choose to avoid trouble and avoid losing her life. If Penelope chooses the first option, the servant will run to complain to the Duke about her inappropriate behavior. This could lead to serious consequences for Penelope and worsen her situation. When rumors of her behavior reach the Duke's eldest son, he will punish her by leaving her without food or water. Penelope realizes that this could lead to her death from starvation. Penelope also cannot choose the second option, as the Duke's second son will pass by her room and see this scene. This could also lead to serious consequences for her. If the Duke's second son tries to help the servant and pushes Penelope away, she will accidentally fall directly onto the fork lying on the floor and die. This is another danger she must consider. When Penelope got tired of replaying the same scene in the game, she simply hit the back button and went through other special events, avoiding the dangers. Eventually, her body moves on its own as if her actions are controlled by someone else. She realizes that her choices in the game have real consequences, and she must be careful. Penelope, barely holding back tears, resents what she's been offered as food. She can't believe it's actually food and calls it just slop. Her face expresses despair and pain. In response to her outrage, the young Duke takes the food in his hands, grabbing it decisively. Penelope looks at him bewildered, not understanding what he is going to do next. The Duke, to complete the scene, decides to taste this food, although he does not find it easy. He thinks about how long it will take him to eat it and how difficult it is for him. Penelope, watching the Duke, feels even more desperate. She doesn't understand why he continues to eat this horrible food and feels compassion for him. The protagonist sits in the corner of the room contemplating her fate. It seems to her that she is not part of this family, and her presence here is only a source of trouble and pain. Her thoughts drift into memories of how she was mistreated. She recalls how she was always left out and never accepted in the family, making her life unbearable. The protagonist realizes that her father never cared for her. He doesn't worry about her hunger or problems at school as she is not part of the family to him. Her memories go back in time when her father's legal wife died before she was born. Despite this, her relatives always treated her as an enemy, which made her life even more miserable. These memories make her feel nauseous and disgusted. She feels that she has had enough of this cruel family and does not want to put up with their humiliation any longer. At this point, the young Duke tries to approach Penelope, asking if she is all right. He wants to help her, but she's still shaken and cannot answer his question. Penelope stares in horror at the two dishes, one of which is something horrible and inedible. She does not realize what this food in front of her is, and she is overwhelmed with indignation. The young Duke, seeing Penelope's reaction, immediately asks what she has been given. He is clearly concerned and angry at someone for this act. The servant starts making excuses in fear, saying that she doesn't know where the food came from. Her voice trembles and she realizes the gravity of the situation. The young Duke is furious and pummels the table, demanding an explanation as to why such disgusting food was in front of Penelope. He cannot understand how such a thing could have happened. The Duke humiliates the servant, accusing her of negligence and unacceptable treatment of the mistress. He believes that she should have shown more care and attention. The servant in tears tries to explain that it is not her fault and does not know how it could have happened. She is afraid of the young Duke's anger and tries to justify herself. The young Duke orders the servant to leave the room immediately. He does not wish to see her and demands that she get out. The servant, trembling with fear, promises to tell her father and brother about the incident. Her voice is full of despair and fear of the possible consequences. The young Duke orders another servant to take the girl away and lock her up. He tolerates no excuses and wants her punished. Penelope, sitting at the table, looks tired and depressed. She is asked why she tolerates this treatment and does not resent it. She would normally yell at the servant, but now sits meekly. Penelope, sitting back in her chair, remembers how she could have avoided serious consequences if she hadn't eaten something earlier. She realizes that it was only because of the young Duke's intervention that she escaped danger. The pink-haired Duke thinks about how their encounter changed the course of events. He realizes that many problems were resolved because of the support of his family, especially the Duke's second son. The intrigue surrounding Penelope is discussed in the shadows. The question arises as to how she ended up in this difficult situation. The servant suggests that this is no accident and that all the maids are in on the conspiracy. Penelope realizes that all this time she had to be careful not to fall victim to devious plans. She decides that she should be more vigilant in the future so as not to put herself in danger. The Duke notices that Penelope looks ill and suggests that she call a doctor. His concern is obvious, and he is willing to do what he can to help her recover. However, Penelope is certain that there is no doctor in their house who is willing to help her. She feels that she needs to cope on her own and does not want to burden the Duke with her difficulties. Despite the Duke's concerns, Penelope is convinced that his words are not sincere and do not come from the heart. She decides that she should not rely on the help of others and thanks him for his concern, but refuses the offered help. Penelope is adamant that she does not need help. She believes she can handle the situation on her own and does not wish to draw attention to herself or alarm others. The Duke notices her stubbornness and decides to leave Penelope alone, realizing that it is not worth imposing. He walks away, leaving her alone with her thoughts, but in his heart he continues to worry about her condition. Penelope is certain that she has lost much of her strength the previous night. She feels exhausted, but despite this, she is determined to cope with the situation and continue to fight for her life and well-being. Penelope reflects on her feelings, coming to the conclusion that despite her sympathy, there are still minuses that make her attitude negative. The water in the bowl reflects her confusion and inner turmoil. Her gaze is full of sadness and disappointment as she says her name, realizing the complexity of her life and the contradictory nature of her situation. Her aquamarine eyes and dark pink hair emphasize her uniqueness and otherness. Penelope recalls the moment when she first saw herself in the game and recognized her beauty. However, her independence in real life makes her feel that she might consider herself lucky if it weren't for this fact. Dark pink hair and aquamarine eyes, just like in the game, accentuate her image. But despite all her outward beauty, her appearance seems poisonous, creating the image of a true villainess who is despised. The game system informs us that in hard mode, the game is played on behalf of the villain, Penelope Eckhart, reinforcing her negative image in the eyes of the players and the audience. In the image, Penelope appears as the heroine of the game, the young Duchess Love, Love, Love Project in heavy mode. Her appearance and posture emphasize her strength and danger. Although Penelope is shown in the game as the daughter of a ducal family, she was originally a commoner with no family name. Her mother, a poor merchant, died when Penelope was 12 years old, leaving her to fend for herself. Duke Eckhart, noticing the girl's resemblance to his missing daughter Yvonne, decided to adopt her, giving her a new life and status. Over time, however, her appearance changed drastically. It turned out that Penelope had neither light pink hair nor blue eyes like the Eckhart heirs. This discovery made her spiteful and arrogant, turning her into a false young duchess, despised by everyone, including the Duke. Penelope wonders why the Duke brought her into the house instead of looking for his real daughter. She feels like a pathetic counterfeit of the real heroine, which exacerbates her inner torment and anger. Penelope finally escapes from her former home, dragging her suitcase behind her, and feels a long-awaited release from her tormented past. Memories of being forced to stay in the cursed house until she entered university bring mixed feelings. The photographs show her suffering and rare moments of joy. Although her new home is small and dirty, it has become a refuge for her. Here she has found a place where she can rest and begin to feel safe, surrounded by new friends. Remembering how she barely managed to escape from the people who hurt her, Penelope feels grateful for her freedom, but also realizes the difficulty of her journey, full of danger and fear. Nevertheless, she realizes that her new life is not much different from her old one. Despite her best efforts, she has yet to see much change, which leaves her feeling frustrated. Penelope finds herself in the Duke's house and begins to realize the trials that other children have gone through. She realizes that the cruelty and inhumanity of the place leaves deep scars. She sees that despite the falseness and cruelty, the child adopted by the Duke has experienced terrible things. Penelope realizes that this child has not been given an ounce of common sense and compassion. She gradually comes to the conclusion that all the abuse she has endured has made her a villain. These cruel actions of those around her have turned her into the person she has become. Penelope realizes that a child is powerless if adults do not listen to his cries, no matter how loudly he screams. She feels just as helpless and wonders who she should feel sorry for now, experiencing deep inner conflicts. Penelope, finding herself in a new body, decides to find a way to survive. She realizes the need to remember everything she knows and focuses on writing down her thoughts and plans, beginning to analyze the situation. She decides that in order to survive, she needs to remember everything she knows about the game and the world she finds herself in. This knowledge could give her an advantage in the fight for survival. Concentrating, she recalls details about the game and the world, trying to use all of her memory to figure out how she can best proceed. She tries to systematize her knowledge so she can be ready for any challenge. Characters from the game begin to pop up in her memory. She remembers that there were 5 main target characters in the game, and now she has to face them in this new world. The first of them was Derek Eckhart. He is the eldest son and heir to the Duchy of Eckhart, a strict and arrogant aristocrat who was always preoccupied with inheritance issues and had little interest in Penelope. Next was Reynold Eckhart. He is the second son of the Duke, the possessor of a stroppy character. Flashy and vindictive, he was constantly making quarrels and especially disliked Penelope. Both brothers, Derek and Reynold, the sons of Duke Eckhart, were half-brothers Penelope. They showed little sympathy for her and often caused her trouble with their behavior. Derek was preoccupied with inheritance issues and felt a strong distaste for Penelope as she took the place of his missing sister. This caused him to feel hatred and contempt for the girl. Reynold, in turn, possessed a fiery and angry temper. In the house of the Duke with him had to be especially careful, as any mention of Penelope caused him a storm of negativity and aggression. Penelope realized that the two brothers reminded her of two jerks from her former life. She had to find a way to deal with them and survive in this new world using all her knowledge and skills. The main character is Yvonne, the sibling of the two young men pictured next to her. Their relationship is warm and familial, which is natural since they are siblings. Penelope, unlike Yvonne, is not their blood relative. Perhaps that is why the story here is different from the usual mode, and their interactions have their own peculiarities. One of the characters has a minus 10% rating from the beginning. This is predetermined by the creators and is due to the lack of hope for the relationship to develop. This line is set aside for the sake of side intrigue. Penelope has a strong aversion to the word brother, which emphasizes her dislike for the role she has to play in this family. Callisto Regulus, Crown Prince of the Empire, is a cruel tyrant. His tragic past explains his behavior and his treatment of human life as dust beneath his feet. Penelope realizes that all the information about her brothers and the prince is taken from the normal mode, which makes her doubt the veracity of this data and its relevance to the current situation. In normal mode, the tyrant who thought people were flies changes completely after meeting Yvonne. However, it is he who brutally disposes of Penelope, seeing her as the main villain. Penelope gets goosebumps from Callisto, comparing him to the angel of death. His presence evokes strong emotions and fear in her. In difficulty mode, the Crown Prince killed Penelope more often than others, preventing her from making progress in any branch. His actions were the main obstacle in her path. Winter Burdandy, a mage and head of House Burdandy, hides his true identity behind the image of a crank. He is involved in many deals and trades in information and secret objects, making him an enigmatic figure in the story. Winter routinely helped confirm Yvonne's identity, playing an important role in her life. He was a trusted ally, providing her with support and protection. Every time Penelope came up with devious plans, Winter protected Yvonne using the unique information he extracted. He also improved her reputation by helping her in every endeavor. Winter was polite and romantic. He was always there for Yvonne, giving Yvonne considerable help and support, making him an indispensable ally in her life. However, Penelope wondered how Winter behaved when he was in heavy mode. She felt that she was constantly being killed at the hands of the prince and her brothers, causing her to miss the start of this branch. However, there was still one character left, Eccles, a knight apprentice of the Duchy of Eckhart. He was once an aristocrat of the ruined country, but was now a slave chosen for his skills. Duke Eckhart, upon seeing Eccles, ransomed him for a huge sum of money. In the second part of the normal mode, Eccles became the youngest swordmaster and earned the title, earning him respect. Eccles was the only one of all the characters who sympathized with Penelope until the very end. He was always loyal to her despite the difficulties they faced. Maybe it was the affection that developed during Penelope's service. However, when Penelope and Yvonne faced each other, he always hesitated on which side to take. Penelope realized that she didn't have to face Winter when she was in heavy-duty mode. This made the situation difficult, for his support was vital to her. She couldn't afford to lose the sympathy of the main male characters. She realized the importance of their support in order to achieve her goals and complete the story successfully. Penelope realized that she had to reach the finale with one of the characters before Penelope's coming-of-age ceremony. This moment became crucial because her goal is not to fail and find happiness, otherwise the story will follow the usual scenario. The day of the return of the real heroine of the game is approaching. Penelope, realizing the threat, prepares to change her fate and avoid tragedy. She decides to use all her strength and capabilities to succeed until that day. The story in normal mode begins with Penelope's coming-of-age ceremony when the real ducal daughter Yvonne returns. The events of heavy mode unfold a little earlier, and Penelope realizes that she doesn't have as much time as she would like. If Penelope does not reach the finale before that day, events will follow the usual scenario, and she will be killed by one of the male characters who care for Yvonne. She sees before her a sword adorned with roses, which symbolizes her journey and possible doom. The fake ducal daughter, Penelope, will lose everything on her coming-of-age day because that is when the real daughter will return. All the male characters will try to eliminate her, believing her to be the villain. Penelope realizes that her life hangs in the balance. Penelope realizes that the threat of game over is looming over her. If she loses, she will lose all hope. She decides to fight to the end to change her fate and is not going to give up without a fight. Her determination is growing by the second. She has put too much effort into escaping from a horrible house, and now she can't afford to die in the game. Penelope is ready to fight for her life and future, and her determination knows no bounds. She recalls all her efforts and suffering. Penelope is determined that she will not die for anything. Her determination and will to live become pivotal in her fight against all obstacles. She realizes that her fate depends only on herself, and she is ready to face all dangers. She confidently tells herself that she will. Penelope is convinced of her success and believes that she can change her destiny. She is ready to use all her strength and skills to survive and win in this cruel game. Her eyes are full of determination and faith in herself. Penelope is confident in her success and believes she can change her destiny. She is ready to use all her strength and skills to survive and win in this cruel game. Penelope will not allow herself to die and is ready to fight to the end. A butler appears before Penelope, informing her that her lordship is looking for her. This news stirs up many emotions in her, but she tries to remain calm and collected. Her gaze reflects her inner tension and readiness for the meeting. The servant, disturbed by the visitor's disrespectful behavior, pours out her worries. How could someone so unceremoniously enter the young duchess's room? Not even a butler would allow such behavior. Penelope ponders how to react to the situation. She realizes that she cannot afford to be angry at will, so she tries to find the most appropriate solution from the options offered. Her gaze clears, and she decides that the right thing to do is to choose the second response option. This decision comes to her after a moment's reflection, and she confidently pronounces it. Penelope is pleased with her choice. Since the Duke is looking for her himself, this provides her with a great opportunity. She realizes that she needs to take this chance to strengthen her position. The protagonist, suddenly bursting into the office, happily informs her father that she has been accepted to the university. She is happy and proud of her achievement, waiting for his approval. Her father, busy with his work, looks up and asks if this is all she came here for. His cold tone makes her wonder about her true motives. She embarrassedly confesses that she would like to live separately near the university to study and develop. She hopes her father will allow her to take this step. Her father deliberates for a long time, but finally agrees and promises to make all the arrangements for her move. This news brings her relief and joy. The heroine realizes that her efforts were not in vain. She studied hard and entered a prestigious university not for the approval of her family, but to escape from a terrible home and start a new life. Penelope, standing pensively, remembers how often she encountered this kind of behavior even before she was in this world. She immerses herself in memories of her past life, analyzing her path and the reasons for her actions. The butler, stern and solid, leads Penelope into the hall. He discreetly announces her arrival, introducing her as Lady Penelope. A shadow of anxiety and anticipation of an impending meeting with someone important can be seen in her eyes. Penelope's father, seated behind a massive desk, is busy with documents. His gaze is fixed downward, not rising to the entering Penelope. The scene is filled with tension and anticipation of her next move. Penelope's father looks up at her, as if surprised by her presence. His eyes read not only surprise, but also a certain distrust. Penelope senses this and pulls herself together. Penelope's father asks why she has been summoned. He mentions that there was some sort of scandal from the morning. Penelope, wary of his reaction, realizes that she must give a clear and convincing explanation. In her thoughts, Penelope scrolls through possible answers and consequences. She is certain that the situation requires attention and carefully considers every word so as not to cause more resentment. Penelope analyzes all the options. It seems to her that no one would want to take care of a rude adopted daughter. She wonders why, playing the game, she chose this particular, in her opinion, stupid option. Penelope remembers that if she had the same eyes and hair as the Duke's real daughter, she could have hoped for at least some feelings on his part. Her thoughts are filled with regret and bitterness. She sees the Duke signing the documents and realizes that she has very little chance of changing his attitude. There is a sense of aloofness and coldness in his actions and words that makes her uneasy. Penelope comes to the conclusion that she will not be able to choose any of the proposed options. She realizes that her future fate depends on her determination and ability to find non-standard solutions. Penelope realizes that she needs to survive this difficult moment and hopes that the chosen path will not lead her to death. She tries to remain calm despite the tension and reassures herself that her ladyship has nothing to worry about. Penelope's father reminds her that it has been 6 years since she entered this family. This makes Penelope think about her time in the Eckhart household and how it has changed her life. Penelope recalls that she and her father are now both 18 years old. She was adopted when she was 12, and this confirms her thoughts about how quickly time has flown by. Penelope begins to realize that the coming-of-age ceremony is important in this world. It becomes clear to her that this event is celebrated on her 18th birthday, and she realizes how important it is to her future. She wonders how much time she has left until the real Lady Eckhart can return. This leads her to even more excitement and realization of her role in this family. Penelope's father notices that getting into this mansion is not easy. Only those who have proven their worth through talent and effort can pass through Eckhart's gates, and this makes Penelope feel proud and responsible. After being adopted, Penelope began to be treated like a duchess. Penelope's father spared no expense to support her and put up with her extravagant spending, which adds to Penelope's guilt over her carelessness. Penelope's father expresses doubt that Penelope has done anything significant for the family in all the 6 years she has spent in the Eckhart household. This causes her to feel helpless and want to prove her worth. Penelope is faced with a choice. She has to make one of the proposed decisions, each of which could significantly affect her future and her position in the family. She realizes that she must act decisively. Penelope makes her decision, ready to fight for her place in the world and prove her worth to the Eckhart family. The heroine enters the world of the game, where she sees many different features on her device, wondering if all modern games are really so complicated and confusing. Her attention is drawn to the game's interface, which offers many features. She wonders if she needs to use all these features, as she already finds the game challenging. Penelope realizes that there is more to the game than just the interface, but also many plot twists. She decides to use the new features if the right opportunity presents itself. During one of the plot points, Penelope encounters her father. She doesn't understand what he is doing, but feels guilty about her past mistakes. Penelope addresses her father by calling him father. This causes him to be surprised, as he did not expect such an address from her. Penelope begins to realize that her actions in the game can be freer. She is pleased that she can now move and speak as she wishes without restriction. She never thought she would be so moved by being able to speak and act at will. Penelope apologizes for the scandal she caused and promises to change her behavior. Penelope realizes that her actions were wrong towards the servants. She decides to reflect on her actions during her probation in order to become a better and fairer person. Penelope, standing in front of her father, tries to justify herself for the incident of the morning. She assures him that it was not her fault and that she was actually the victim. Her father's face shows doubt and tension. Recalling the incident, Penelope sees broken dishes and fallen roses. She realizes that her past behavior makes people not believe her, which causes her to feel despair and hopelessness. Penelope realizes that if she persists, only she will suffer. In order to survive and not make her situation worse, she will have to submit and bow her head and admit guilt, even if it is not her fault. Clenching her fist with impotence, Penelope appeals to her father to forgive her this time. She hopes he will soften and understand her situation. In her voice, you can hear the pleading and fear of possible punishment. Her father looks at her in disbelief, but after a pause, he agrees. He says he understands her and orders her to stand up. His voice is stern, but there is a shadow of sympathy in it. Penelope rises slowly, feeling relieved. Her father reminds her of the importance of the Eckhart family and warns her not to miss this chance. His words give her hope that she can make things right. With eyes full of tears, she promises not to disappoint him. Inwardly, she thanks fate that she was able to keep her position and not be punished further. Turning away, Penelope reflects on how she has managed to cope with this situation. She realizes that she should be grateful for this chance and not repeat past mistakes, lest she disappoint her father again. However, her father's words echo in her head. He reminded her that she should live quietly like a dead rat. These words hurt her, but she realizes that it is the only way to survive in this house. She decides to be careful and not draw attention to herself, realizing that this is the only way she can avoid more problems and keep her place in the family. Derek says the name Amelia, with concern in his voice, realizing that he has lost a valued servant. This woman had served faithfully and devotedly to the ducal household for 10 years, but something had changed. Penelope, meeting Derek's gaze, remembers that no matter how much money they offered, no one wanted to be his personal servant. Now she stands before him, full of determination, despite her fear. Derek looks at Penelope with sadness, remembering that she was the only one who volunteered to serve him. But now it's over, and it pains him to realize it. Penelope is angry, feeling the injustice. She has managed to endure all the hardships, but she wonders if she is finally happy. Her anger boils over, and she cannot hide her emotions. Penelope makes excuses that it was all his brother's fault, not hers. She herself almost died trying to survive. Even so, she's ordered to be taken away and locked up, making her feel betrayed. She decides it's best to keep quiet so as not to make the situation worse. Inside, she realizes that she needs to use the help of the system to survive and find a way out of the situation. Penelope screams in panic to shut down the system's options. She feels like the game wants to kill her by any means necessary. She feels cornered and doesn't know what to do next. Derek chides her for her lack of manners, not even wanting to hear her explanation. Penelope tries to justify herself, feeling that her words mean nothing. She apologizes for the inconvenience, feeling deeply sad and tired. Penelope struggles to control herself, realizing that the situation is becoming unbearable. She wonders how long she will have to apologize for mistakes she did not make. Despair and pain flares in her heart, but she resolves not to give up, despite all the difficulties. Penelope, feeling lost and humiliated, recognizes that she does not know her place in this world. Her pride prevents her from bowing down to others, and every time she has to do so, she feels pathetic and miserable. However, Penelope realizes that for the sake of survival, she has to humble herself over and over again, doing so countless times. Now she is forced to bow down again in order to survive. Derek notices that what Penelope did was wrong and asks that the maid not be fired, as the fault lies with herself. She has already apologized to her father. Penelope is disgusted by how similar their situations are to Penelope's, even though the latter acted cruelly. In order to survive, Penelope realizes that she will have to ask for forgiveness again. Derek promises that Penelope will live quietly and not trouble him, as he considers this world a game and not reality. Penelope apologizes again, hoping for understanding and forgiveness from Derek, who warns that this is the last time he will put up with her behavior. She agrees with his words and prepares to live her life without causing trouble, though she feels weak and despairing inside. Because of the conflict with the maid and the guilt, Penelope has not eaten since the morning and begins to feel very weak, almost falling to the floor. Penelope passes out from hunger and fatigue. Derek notices this and is concerned about her condition, remembering what she was told about the bad food. Derek contemplates the need to call a doctor to help Penelope, realizing the seriousness of her condition and the need for medical attention. Penelope reflected on the fact that if she had not apologized as prescribed by the game script, Derek might have done something unpredictable. She realized that his sword could have been used against her, and that made her uneasy. Looking at Derek, Penelope had mixed feelings. She had just promised not to inconvenience him anymore, hoping that her words would resonate in his heart. You could see the determination and regret in her eyes. Derek asked Penelope to leave him alone. He tried not to ruin her mood and avoid a situation where he would be forced to point his sword at her. His inner emotions were strong and conflicting. Penelope lay on the floor, marveling at the fact that she was still alive. Her thoughts were filled with doubt and fear of Derek, but at the same time, she felt relieved that she was able to survive the intense encounter. Realizing that her hard play all night had not been in vain, Penelope remembered how she had even managed to call him young Duke in a tense situation. It was an unexpected feat in her condition. Penelope had tried to win Derek's favor, but every time she called him brother, his sympathy for her dropped. Apparently, he despised her so much that any word out of her mouth made him cringe. She remembered how many times she had died for ignorance of this fact. Now Penelope was afraid to even imagine what would happen if she addressed him with that word again. She firmly resolved never to call Derek brother again. Derek was far more demanding than her real big brother. Penelope realized that she needed to not make any more mistakes that could lead to her death and to act more cautiously. Realizing that a lot had happened, Penelope felt the need to eat in order to regain her strength and continue fighting for her life. Her body and mind needed to rest and recover. Her thoughts were consumed by the events that had occurred. She felt exhausted and didn't want to think about anything. Penelope sought solitude to catch her breath and ponder her next steps, suspecting that her situation was more complicated than she had realized. A young man with pink hair accuses someone of stealing, calling her a nasty rat. The man next to him asks him to be more polite, while the other watches from the sidelines. Penelope looks up at them and notices that their voices have changed, realizing that this is a dream. Penelope realizes that this is her dream. She is standing in the dark, her surroundings are unclear, and she feels lost. The dream fills her with fear and anxiety, though she tries to remain calm. Penelope's father angrily asks her where she got Yvonne's pendant from. He is clearly not pleased, and his voice is full of accusation. He reminds her that he has forbidden her to enter Yvonne's room. Penelope replies in a panic that she has never seen that pendant or entered Yvonne's room. Her fear intensifies when she hears that someone saw her there. Her voice trembles and she feels cornered. A servant reports that he has seen Penelope going up and down the third floor for the past few weeks. He seems confident in his words, which adds to Penelope's anxiety. Penelope makes excuses that she wasn't the one who went into Yvonne's room, trying to convince everyone of her innocence. She is desperate, her voice full of despair and fear of inevitable punishment. Her father gives the order to lock up all the rooms on the third floor, and especially Yvonne's room. The servant confirms the execution of the order, adding tension to the situation. Penelope realizes that her options to justify herself are limited. Her father continues to insist that the jeweler inspect Penelope's pendant the next day. Penelope tries to justify herself, but her words are drowned in accusations. Her attempts to explain herself seem pointless. One of the men accuses Penelope of lying, calling her a defiant girl. His face expresses anger and contempt. Penelope realizes that the situation is getting worse. Her heart beats faster. Penelope tries to justify herself again, assuring everyone that she is innocent, but her words sound weaker and less convincing. She feels trapped, helpless in the face of accusations. Penelope began spending large sums on jewelry, attracting the attention of the jewelers on her estate. She did not care about the disgruntled cries of the servants or the reproaches of her brothers, who resented her extravagance and lack of moderation. The butler's sudden visit made Penelope uneasy. She was alarmed at his appearance at such a time, but overcoming her doubts, she decided to listen to him. The butler approached her with an important matter that required an immediate solution. The butler informed her that there was an urgent matter that needed to be settled as soon as possible. Penelope, startled by the surprise, began to suspect that she had been set up again. She strained to understand what trouble might have arisen in her absence. The butler went on to explain that a new personal maid for Penelope had to be chosen. This news took her by surprise, and she wondered if this urgent matter involved her personal servant. Her suspicions were heightened. He confirmed that the selection of a new maid had to be made before dinner in order for everything to go according to plan. Penelope, trying to make sense of the situation, suddenly interrupted him and asked an unexpected question that betrayed her confusion. Penelope asked the butler what his name was, which confused him. He replied that his name was Fennel, but he looked confused and puzzled. Penelope insisted on answering, trying to figure out what was going on. Fennel, with some hesitation, informed that his name was Fennel. Penelope, displeased that he did not give his last name, proceeded to ask what her own name was. The butler was even more confused. Penelope emphasized that she had never heard of a rule allowing commoners to enter the rooms of aristocrats without permission. She wondered if it was possible that the butler knew of such rules. With her questions, she sought to bring him out into the open. She continued that the man had invaded the young girl's room without permission, which could have caused rumors and misunderstanding, among others. Penelope intended to find out what caused the butler's behavior and what was behind his words. Penelope's eyes were determined to find out what was behind the butler's behavior. She suspected that there was more behind this than just the appointment of a new maid. Her determination and confidence gave her the strength to act. Fennell, the white-haired butler, is shocked by her mistress's words and wonders how she can say such things. Penelope, the pink-haired girl, patiently replies that he should understand her syllables if necessary. Realizing his mistake, Fennell embarrassedly admits that he made a mistake in his haste and apologizes to his mistress. His face expresses sincere remorse and concern. Penelope, unhappy with the situation, coldly tells Fennell that he had better stay out of her sight for a while. She adds that in the future, if he has business with her, let him send someone else in his place. Fennell tries to argue that it is his responsibility to find servants for the estate, but Penelope flatly demands one word from him, yes or no. Fennell, head down, replies that he understands her and says yes. When Fennell tries to continue the conversation, Penelope abruptly interrupts him and tells him to leave, adding that she needs nothing more. The butler obediently agrees and leaves. Left alone, Penelope is relieved to lie down on her bed and says that she is finally relieved after what has happened. Her face expresses fatigue and relief at the same time. Penelope wonders if she was too rough on Fennell, given his age and long years of service. She hopes, however, that he will not report it to the Duke. The girl recalls that the game had a reputation-building system based on relationships with others. She wonders if this has any effect on her situation and how important it is to maintain good relationships. Penelope realizes that her previous behavior was stupid. If she was angry, she should have used her position instead of yelling at everyone and making scandals. She realizes that she needs to change. These events make Penelope reconsider her actions and attitude towards the people around her. She has to learn how to manage her emotions and use her influence more wisely. The housekeeper asks Penelope how she slept. Penelope ponders whether her words of last night have worked, for it seems that now the servants will not enter her room without permission. Penelope replies that it is all right. The housekeeper informs her that after yesterday's incident, Penelope has lost her personal maid and offers to find a new one. Penelope asks the housekeeper to let her know if she has someone in mind. The housekeeper offers to find a new maid personally if Penelope does not choose anyone. Penelope asks the name of the girl who served her. The housekeeper confirms that it was Emily. The housekeeper explains that Emily was deprived of her wages for 3 months and sent to work in the laundry for neglecting her duties. Penelope declares that Emily should continue to work as her personal maid. The housekeeper is surprised and explains that it would be inconvenient if no one were to help her at the moment. Penelope insists that it would be better to keep someone who knows her duties well. The housekeeper confirms that Emily will continue to work. The housekeeper explains that the young master has personally punished Emily for her misdeeds. Penelope asks what exactly happened. The housekeeper replies that Emily knows what is really going on, and so she should be returned to duty. Penelope agrees to this. The housekeeper assures Penelope that Emily will be returned to her duties. Penelope expresses her satisfaction with this decision. Penelope is furious and demands that her maid be brought in immediately, as she is not comfortable doing everything herself. Her anger is clear on her face, and her words leave the housekeeper no choice. The housekeeper regretfully explains that she needs to ask His Grace's permission first. Her face expresses concern as she realizes that fulfilling Penelope's demand will not be easy. Penelope is displeased that no one is able to follow her orders with the same zeal as Penelope did. She feels frustration and discontent thinking about how life in the house has changed. Under normal circumstances, things would have been different. When it came to Yvonne, the servants obeyed her like a proper duchess, but now everyone acts differently, and this makes Penelope angry. Penelope reflects on the fact that she wants to be seen as angry and throwing things. She wonders if those around her really want her to go back to her old, aggressive behavior. Penelope decides that she will go to her father herself to clear the air. Her determination surprises the housekeeper, but Penelope is adamant and ready to act. Penelope explains to the housekeeper that she will explain everything to her father herself and ask him to forgive Emily. She hopes this won't cause any problems and looks at the housekeeper expecting confirmation. The housekeeper realizes that it wasn't Emily who organized the bullying of the young duchess anyway. She knows that Emily is not the only one involved, and that even the housekeeper could have justified the abuse. Penelope asks where her father is now, and the housekeeper informs her that His Grace left for the imperial palace as early as this morning. Penelope realizes that her plan may run into difficulties. Nevertheless, Penelope is adamant that she will bring Emily right away. Her determination and confidence leave the housekeeper no choice, and she agrees to do her bidding. The housekeeper worries that she has become anxious over small things as she has grown older and apologizes for her anxiety, realizing that Penelope has been generous. She admits her mistake and apologizes. Penelope seems to notice that the reputation system is in complete chaos. She is thoughtful and concerned about the current state of affairs. Penelope demands that her maid follow her orders more carefully so that she does not have to repeat her orders twice. The maid listens fearfully to her words. Penelope decides inwardly that she's not going to die because of such treatment. She decisively tells the maid that she can go. Penelope points out to Emily that she has made breakfast. Emily hesitantly informs her that she has made breakfast for Penelope, clearly nervous and worried about her job. Penelope assesses the breakfast served, seeing a meat dish with a side dish in front of her. She stares at the food in silence, seemingly unhappy with what is in front of her. Penelope calls out to Emily and demands a needle from her. Emily panics and hastily replies that she is willing to do her bidding. Penelope points Emily to the needle she used to stab her with every morning. Emily is shocked and begins to realize that this is something important and serious. Penelope holds the needle in front of Emily, reminding her of her past actions. Emily is horrified and begins to beg for forgiveness, realizing that she has made a serious mistake. Penelope demands that Emily not make her repeat her orders twice. Emily is stunned and apologizes, bowing to Penelope after realizing her guilt. Penelope was sitting in her room when Emily's maid timidly approached her, asking her to hurry up and bring her something important. Emily trembled nervously, realizing the importance of the task. Emily hastily searched for what Penelope had asked for in her things, clearly nervous and pressured. Eventually, she managed to find the item she needed, a thin needle. Penelope, upon receiving the needle, was certain that Emily had hidden it safely. Her gaze was full of confidence and determination. She knew what she was doing. Penelope reflected on the pain Emily felt every morning when she woke up to the pain in her arm. It was her secret suffering that no one knew about. Penelope ordered Emily to watch carefully. Emily was puzzled, not realizing what was happening, but was willing to obey the order. Emily, with tears in her eyes, asked Penelope why she was doing this. Penelope calmly explained that Emily was the one who had inflicted those wounds on her. Penelope informed Emily that she currently had 2 wounds on her arm, but that they might soon increase to 3, 4, or even 5. Emily was shocked to hear this. From that moment on, Penelope decided to accept everything from Emily: water for washing, clothes, food. She confidently declared that she would accept everything without question. Penelope cautioned that the number of wounds on her arm would only increase over time, and some might find that strange. Emily was confused, not realizing where this was all going. Emily turned to Penelope again in a timid voice, clearly not understanding what was going to happen next, or why Penelope was acting so confident and determined. Penelope ponders the fact that someone might ask, who would dare to abuse a member of the Eckhart family so cruelly? She is certain that this someone would most likely be her brother Reynold. Penelope emphasizes to Emily that her future depends on how she behaves, and this causes the maid deep concern. Emily realizes that her position in the house and her safety depend on her behavior and loyalty to Penelope. After Penelope allows Emily to stand up, she reminds her that the mistress has finished her meal, so now Emily can return to her duties. Penelope notices that Emily seems smart and savvy, and decides that if the need arises, she can use her to her advantage. This thought brings her a sense of control and confidence in her abilities. Emily remembers how Penelope bullied her in the past and realizes that this has now become her weakness. Despite this, she marvels at how quickly Penelope was able to adapt to her new situation. At this point, Reynold intervenes in the situation and angrily asks Penelope what she is doing. His indignation and determination are readable in his voice, which only elicits a slight chuckle from Penelope. Reynold tries to understand the reasons for Penelope's behavior, his face and intonation expressing extreme bewilderment and tension. He cannot understand why his sister is behaving so cruelly and cavalierly. Emily, frightened and uncertain, tries to explain herself to the young gentleman, but her voice trembles with fear. She realizes that her situation is deteriorating and any mistake could cost her dearly. Reynold tells Emily to leave, but Penelope interrupts him, warning Emily to stay, and defiantly responds to her brother to try to stop her. Reynold demands an explanation from Penelope, not understanding why she is behaving this way, his eyes full of anger and confusion. Penelope, for her part, only chuckles and maintains her composure. Penelope ponders the idea of a guy who is flawed, but dismisses the thought. She is immersed in her thoughts until she is interrupted by a voice asking if she is even listening. Reynold yells at Penelope in anger, asking why she chose to leave the vile girl. He feels that her actions are unacceptable. Meanwhile, a mysterious man with an angry expression mocks Penelope, saying that she overestimates herself and that if she thinks she is being treated badly, she should leave. The same man continues his tirade, insisting that Penelope should have gotten out of their house while he was offering it nicely. He is certain that he is right. Penelope, despite her brother's words, realizes that even if she tries to change things, talking to him will not lead to a normal dialogue. She remains calm and confident. Reynold, clearly annoyed, asks Penelope what she meant when she said everything was fine. He doesn't understand her indifference to the situation. Penelope explains that the girl has been feeding her mistress tainted food, and that can't be okay. She insists that her words have been misinterpreted. Reynold angrily accuses Penelope of not knowing her place. He believes that her actions are unacceptable, and she dared to mock the Eckhart family. The young Duke continues his tirade, stating that there is no place in their home for someone as disgusting as Penelope. He believes that there are people who will happily work without pay. Penelope, despite all the accusations, remains calm. She recalls hearing those words many times and realizes that Reynold often said those words to Penelope as if they had already been said routinely. Reynold resents the fact that someone is making fun of him. He believes that the maid has too low an opinion of Penelope if she allows herself to treat her like this. Penelope admits that everyone in the house treats her like she is nothing. She has already spoken to her father and asked Reynold not to worry about the situation. Reynold remarks in surprise that he has already asked his father to get rid of this nasty maid, but is met with rejection. Reynold can't believe that his father and older brother didn't agree to his request to kick Emily out. Penelope explains that they didn't say it outright, but hinted at Emily's years of service. Reynold learns that Penelope has taken Emily back into her personal service to avoid conflict. Penelope confirms this, admitting that it was the only option. Reynold is outraged, believing that Penelope should have said no. She is certain that it would have made no difference, and repeats his question with irritation. Reynold is concerned that Penelope might die because she is constantly being fed spoiled food. He doubts that the new maid will be any better. Penelope tries to remain calm, realizing that she cannot afford to incur Reynold's wrath by saying that she is being treated this way because of his family. She feels that it would only hurt his pride. Penelope notes that Reynold's sympathy has increased slightly, but is still negative. She fears that if she falls again, it will lead to her death. Penelope is terrified of the possible consequences and her attempts to cope with the situation, despite the obvious dislike from Reynold and his family. Penelope recalls a meeting with her father in which she did not ask Emily to be fired, but apologized for the scandal she caused during her probationary period. Reynold is surprised and asks why she was meeting with her father then. Penelope explains that she was on her knees begging her father to forgive her for the incident. Reynold is amazed that Penelope begged her father on her knees and asks if her father ordered her to do so. Penelope replies that she made the decision to apologize on her own, promising to be more careful and avoid unpleasant situations from now on. Penelope asks Reynold to just forget about the incident, explaining that if he doesn't get involved, her chances of survival will double. She begs her brother to stop fighting with her for their mutual good. Reynold, disturbed by what he has heard, asks Penelope a sharp question about where her self-respect lies. He doesn't understand how she can forgive offenses so easily and not defend herself. Penelope, holding back her emotions, reminds her brother that he has been treating her like he was hoping for a certain outcome all along, and now she intends to put an end to that relationship. Reynolds, surprised and confused, cannot believe what is happening. He feels that he is losing control of the situation and does not know how to react to Penelope's determination. Penelope continues to stand her ground confidently, expressing her determination to make a difference and not allow herself to be treated unfairly anymore. Reynolds begins to realize that his sister has changed and is now willing to fight for her place in this world, despite any difficulties that may arise. Emotional tension builds between Penelope and Reynolds, but both realize that this conversation is necessary for their future relationship and personal growth. Reynolds realizes that he must respect Penelope's choices and her desire for justice, and that their relationship can grow stronger and better if he supports her in this pursuit. Penelope, realizing that the real culprit stands before her, not the butler or Emily, feels relief and anxiety at the same time. Her thoughts are filled with doubt and fear for the future as the situation becomes increasingly dangerous and unpredictable. Reynolds, clenched fists, prepares for a serious conversation with Penelope. He feels an inner conflict, wanting to explain himself, but realizes that this could change their relationship forever. Worry and uncertainty are reflected in his eyes. Penelope, despite her misgivings, says she doesn't accuse Reynolds of anything. She admits that she has behaved foolishly and wrongly up to this point and is now trying to find common ground and make sense of the situation. Reynolds looks tiredly at Penelope, admitting that he is tired of everything that is happening. In his gaze, you can read a mixture of disappointment and regret, because he also did not expect their paths to cross under such circumstances. Penelope recognizes that she can't stay in the Eckhart family for the rest of her life. Her decision goes deeper than just an unwillingness to follow the rules. She seeks independence and her own path, which is different from the traditions and expectations of the family. Reynolds, upon hearing this, is shocked. He can't believe Penelope is really going to leave. His bewilderment turns into an attempt to understand the reasons and possible consequences of such a decision for both of them. Penelope assures Reynolds that he doesn't need to worry about her anymore. She takes responsibility for her actions and decisions, showing that she is ready to move forward on her own despite all the difficulties and challenges. Penelope asks Reynolds to step outside as she is going for a swim. At this point, she wants to be alone to gather her thoughts and make important decisions without being distracted by the presence of other people. Penelope notices that she has never seen this facial expression on Reynolds' face in the game. This unexpected discovery makes her wonder how serious their feelings are and how much they affect real life. She worries that Reynolds' sympathy might fade because of current events, despite all her careful moves. Her heart shrinks at the thought that all their efforts may be in vain, but she resolves not to give up and fight for her happiness. Penelope, standing in the room, is surprised to think that she thought Reynolds was the most hopeless of all the characters. She realizes that shutting down the other options was the right decision, but realizes that she must now proceed with extreme caution, as if walking on thin ice. Penelope unexpectedly receives an invitation from the imperial palace, which gives her mixed feelings. She ponders why she has been invited and what it might mean for her future. Emily, her maid, confirms that it is an invitation to a banquet in honor of the second prince's birthday. Penelope begins to realize the importance of this event and the possible consequences. Emily hands Penelope the invitation, sealed with the royal seal. Penelope looks at the envelope and feels her heart begin to beat faster, realizing the significance of what is happening. Emily informs Penelope that the celebration will take place tomorrow and that she needs to begin preparations quickly. Penelope realizes that time is running short and begins to feel nervous. Penelope would like to stay in her room, have everything she needs brought to her, and avoid seeing other men. She dreams of tranquility and privacy, but realizes that this is not possible. Deciding that preparations must begin immediately, Penelope plans to go to the palace. Thoughts of meeting the crown prince cause her anxiety and excitement. Thinking about the upcoming meeting, Penelope hopes to make a good impression and cope with the excitement. She prepares for the trip, realizing the importance of the events to come. Her thoughts are interrupted by Emily's question about whether her father will be traveling with them. Penelope learns that his lordship is busy tomorrow and will not be able to accompany them, which makes her even more anxious. Penelope realizes that meeting the crown prince could change her life. She decides to pull herself together and prepare for the meeting, hoping to make a decent impression and change her fate for the better. Penelope learns that the first young lord will personally accompany her. This made her despondent, as she had a premonition of trouble from this meeting. When the maid noticed that Penelope had turned pale, she expressed concern. Penelope asked her to step outside to think about the situation, wanting to be alone with her thoughts. Penelope reasoned that she would pretend to be sick to avoid seeing Derek. She realizes that his sympathy will definitely wane, given his temper. She recalls how she was constantly dying trying to meet the crown prince. Each time her attempt failed and she died again and again. Penelope reflected that she would die if she went to see the crown prince, and she would die if she didn't. She was tormented by the hopelessness of the situation and the awfulness of the game she had gotten herself into. She hoped that perhaps dying here would help her return to the real world. It seemed like a quicker path for her than going through hopeless plot threads. Deciding that she has nothing to lose, Penelope makes the decision to meet with the crown prince and try to die again to find a way out of this game. The maids show Penelope a new dress and earrings, hoping to lift her spirits. They are sure it will lift her spirits and make her look better. They suggest that Penelope get her hair done, putting her hair up and makeup done. Penelope is surprised that the maids, who used to neglect her, are now trying to help. Observing the change in the maids' behavior, Penelope realizes that they are more pleased than she is. Although she has established her authority, their rapid change surprises her. Penelope ponders, reflecting on the fact that outfits can indeed bring joy when you look great. She plans her look for an upcoming event where she needs to look stern and elegant. She orders the maids to bring a dark dress that covers her neck with minimal jewelry and understated makeup. The maids are surprised by such demands and wonder why such austerity is necessary. Despite the fact that the evening is organized by the imperial family, Penelope insists on her choice of outfit. She does not want to spend effort on appearance, but prefers to follow her inner convictions. Penelope explains to the maids that she understands their intentions, but insists that her trip to the palace is not about showing off her beauty. It is important for her to maintain her modesty and grace. Penelope chooses a dark, elegant dress from the closet despite her doubts. She realizes that it is not a perfect choice, but in this situation it is the right outfit that fits her mood and plans. She asks everyone to leave the room except Emily. The maids comply and leave, leaving Penelope and Emily alone. Penelope has something important to tell her trusted maid. Penelope asks Emily to bring long gloves that will match her dress. Emily is surprised that her mistress wants to wear gloves and notes that everything looks fine without them, but Penelope is persistent. She explains to Emily that even though her scars have gotten lighter, she can't let other people see them. Penelope resolutely hides her pain and inner turmoil by covering them up with dainty gloves. Emily realizes the importance of Penelope's request and promises to bring the gloves. Penelope, seeing that Emily has relaxed because of her kind attitude, decides to remind her of the need for strictness and obedience. Finally, Penelope meets a young man at the carriage house. He notes that she has matured during her probation. Penelope is angered by his sarcastic remark, for he is seeing her for the first time in a long time and immediately begins by criticizing her. Penelope stands tense, agitated, and worried. She senses that something important is happening, but she can't quite figure out exactly what it is. Thoughts swarm in her head, and she tries to focus. Her thoughts are distracted by an unexpected fact. Derek's affection for her has grown. She's surprised, since she hasn't even seen him in the last few days. This fact confuses her and raises even more questions. Derek suddenly appears next to Penelope. She decides to get into the carriage, thinking it will help her gather her thoughts and realize what is going on. She hopes that the ride will give her time to think. Penelope sits in the carriage and tries to figure out what is next for her. She wonders where they are going and what awaits them along the way. Her anxiety increases, but she tries to remain calm. Derek also gets into the carriage, and Penelope can't understand why he didn't get into his own carriage. She senses that something is wrong, and her anxiety builds. She wonders why he has changed his habits. Derek, looking pensive, thinks about them riding together to the palace. It seems strange to him that they would be traveling together, and it gives him mixed feelings. He tries to understand his emotions. Penelope cannot hide her surprise and wonders why they are traveling together. She asks if Derek has any objections, but he only replies that it's not that. She tries to make sense of his intentions. Derek, disturbed by her reaction, doesn't understand why she's so excited. He recalls that she hasn't shown such anxiety before. He suggests that she ride in another carriage if it would be more comfortable for her. Penelope, sensing the growing anxiety, admits that she does not want to ride in the other carriage. Her decision is based on an inner feeling that they need to be together despite all the doubts and insecurities. She feels that she is on the verge of understanding something important. She is ready for the new challenges and trials that lie ahead of them and decides to go all the way, relying on her intuition and faith in the rightness of her decisions. Penelope saw Derek acting disrespectful and rude. She was stunned and thought that if he was going to behave like that, why did he even come? She was deeply disappointed in his behavior. She decides that nothing terrible will happen if they take one ride together in the carriage. Despite her doubts, she hopes it will help them understand each other better and make things right. During the ride, Penelope feels the stifling atmosphere in the carriage and mentally asks for help. She realizes that her patience is running out and she can no longer stand this tense environment. When the carriage finally stops, Penelope is relieved that she can now get out of this death carriage. She is grateful for the spells that sped up the horses and shortened her agony. Derek, seeing that Penelope is suffering, decides to act. He hurries to the carriage door, hoping to help her out and ease her condition. He realizes that she is in great distress. Penelope is surprised that Derek actually wants to help her. She looks at him in disbelief, but sees the sincerity in his eyes and his desire to make things right. She begins to believe him. She remembers that this day has been difficult for Derek as well. For the first time in a long time, she senses that he is willing to compromise and is willing to change his actions for her. This gives her confidence. Derek asks why she's frozen and isn't going to come out. Penelope, realizing that it is time to accept his help, decides to trust him and get out of the carriage. She feels relieved and hopeful. She accepts Derek's hand, and together they get out of the carriage. Penelope thanks him for his support and help. She feels that this is the first step towards their reconciliation and a better relationship. Penelope and Derek walk together hand in hand. There is a new era of understanding and trust in their relationship. They are both willing to work through their issues and move forward together. Penelope, the girl with pink hair, looked anxiously at Derek, who warned her not to act rashly. She knew that her actions could have serious consequences, and she inwardly prepared herself for possible difficulties. Derek reminded Penelope that her probationary period had just ended. This moment was important because now she had to be extra careful not to jeopardize herself by breaking the rules. Derek warned that another scandal would not end with a simple confinement in a room. His words sounded like a threat, and Penelope realized that her position was even more vulnerable than she had thought. Penelope nodded, assuring Derek that she would be careful. She realized that much depended on her actions, and she didn't want to make her situation worse by acting rashly. Many noble guests were gathered at the ball. Penelope saw Derek socializing with others, reminding them of his high status. Meanwhile, she thought about her role in the world and how to behave. The two girls were talking, reminiscing about a tea party where important topics were discussed. Penelope listened to their conversation, trying to figure out what was ahead of her and how she could use the information. Penelope pondered her position in society. She felt that no one would approach her, thinking she was a notorious individual. These thoughts further increased her feelings of loneliness and alienation. She'd come to the ball with a definite purpose. Her plans were clearly defined, and if everything went right, she could return to her world. Penelope was determined despite her inner doubts and anxieties. Penelope waited impatiently for the crown prince's arrival. Her thoughts were preoccupied with how his presence might change the course of events. Finally, the empress and the second prince arrived, causing a wave of whispers among the guests. The guests admired the shiny blonde hair of the empress and the second prince. This color symbolized the imperial family, and their appearance added even more grandeur and significance to the evening. The emperor's vacant throne was not meant for the second prince, but for Callistus, was it not? The second prince seems determined to take on the role, much to the surprise and questions of those around him. During official events, the throne of the emperor has always been occupied by the crown prince. Now the second prince is on the throne, which is puzzling. He politely invites everyone to stand, showing his confidence and power. The second prince thanks those gathered for taking the time to attend his birthday party despite his busy schedule. He hopes that the guests will have a good time at this ordinary celebration. He invites everyone to begin the banquet, which enhances the festive atmosphere. The second prince shows that he is ready for his duties as ruler, demonstrating his maturity and responsibility. Penelope, upon seeing the crown prince, cannot contain her surprise. Suddenly realizing that Callisto is standing in front of her, she wonders why the crown prince has taken the place of the second prince. One of the guests marvels at the second prince's hair, noticing its glow. He claims that no one has ever seen such beautiful hair, not even the queen and the second prince. This emphasizes the uniqueness of Callisto's appearance. Suddenly there is commotion in the hall. The guests notice blood on the floor, which causes panic and alarm. What the man in black has brought is horrifying to everyone present, creating tension and anxiety. Callisto, the first prince, sarcastically wishes his younger brother a happy birthday. His cold stare and sarcastic words do not bode well. The second prince and the girl scream in horror when they notice Callisto's appearance. Their faces express shock and fear when they see him in the castle. Callisto, with a wry smile, asks his mother what is so unusual about him wanting to attend his younger brother's birthday party. His face expresses arrogance and contempt. The girl yells at Callisto, accusing him of daring to show up uninvited. She calls him prince only in words and reproaches him for his terrible behavior. Callisto, smiling slightly, replies that he only came because he was invited. He declares that he has left all important business for this visit. On the floor lies the servant who was sent with the invitation. Callisto explains that the servant was inexperienced and therefore met his death. The girl is shocked. Callisto continues to explain that the servant refused to give him the invitation and did other unpleasant things, so he took care of it himself. Callisto mockingly tells his younger brother to be more careful when choosing servants. He holds a sword in his hand, showing he's not kidding. The second prince, with a face full of anxiety, doesn't understand what's going on. He can't believe that Callisto is so cruel and heartless. Callisto states with a smirk that if his younger brother wants to receive such gifts, he should not hesitate to send people to him in the future. The pink-haired Penelope stares at the unknown man who appears in front of her. She is amazed because this scene was not in the game. The question of what is going on hangs in the air, creating an air of mystery. She ponders the fact that her footprints should have at least hinted at the events behind the scenes, but this moment is completely unfamiliar. Her amazement grows and she tries to figure out what happened. The episode with Callisto finally arrives, but it turns out to be much crazier in reality than in the game. The thought that he might cut her head off the first time she sees him bothers her. Penelope gathers her wits, reminding herself that she came here to die. She realizes the gravity of the situation and her intention that leads her forward. She realizes that she moved here just as she did in the game. This helps her stay confident and not get lost in the chaos going on. Penelope's resolve grows stronger. She prepares to meet Callisto, realizing that there is no turning back and she must go all the way. The walk is long and arduous, her feet aching from her shoes. Penelope wonders how much more she has to overcome to reach her goal. Suddenly, she sees a light that shows her the way. It is a clue as to where she should be headed. She decides to follow the glow, hoping it will lead her to Callisto. She thinks again about the location of her meeting with it. This makes her uneasy, for she is not sure she has understood the directions correctly. Penelope holds up her sword, ready for battle. She wants to find out what rat is hiding here. Callisto appears and he calls her the mad dog of the e-carts, but she does not give up and prepares for the decisive moment. Penelope is horrified to see Callisto accusing her of following him after the events in the banquet hall. His cold eyes and threatening tone left her no chance for an excuse. Callisto, looking intently at Penelope, noted that she looked like she wanted to die. Her mind raced through her thoughts of how to escape this dangerous situation, but she couldn't think of anything. Penelope couldn't answer, and Callisto demanded an explanation from her, accusing her of following him like a rat. Her thoughts were confused, and fear stiffened her movements. Penelope realized that if she did nothing, she would die by Callisto's hand. She tried to find a way out, but his presence and threatening words made her efforts pointless. Callisto continued to mock her silence, saying it was time to say goodbye to her family. These words plunged Penelope into even greater terror, and she realized that time was running out. He promised to deliver her last words in person. Penelope, feeling desperate, screamed that she would say anything he wanted to hear just to save herself. Her heart was beating so hard she couldn't think straight. Callisto, smirking, told her to speak. Penelope could feel her strength draining, and her thoughts became more and more confused. She realized that she needed to act quickly. Penelope realized her mistake and pondered how to explain herself to Callisto. Fear for her life made her think even faster, but there were no answers. She thought back to the reset button, thinking that if it wasn't there, she wouldn't be able to die as she had planned. Penelope went over every possible escape option, her fear growing worse by the second. Penelope realized that she had only lasted this long because she had turned off all options. Her thoughts were filled with despair and fear, but she knew she had to find a way out if she was to survive. Callisto, the first prince, stands with a cold expression on his face and tells Penelope that even at this distance he can hear her thoughts. He waits impatiently for her response. Penelope, feeling pressured, looks at the prince anxiously, realizing the importance of her answer. Penelope, feeling insecure, realizes that her answer must be convincing. Many thoughts swirl through her mind, but she realizes that her confession must be sincere and clear. The prince continues to stare at her, waiting to hear the truth. Finally, Penelope makes up her mind and confesses to the prince that she likes him. She takes a step forward, her heart beating faster and her voice trembling slightly with excitement. Her confession sounds sincere and from the heart. Callisto, surprised by her words, asks if she is really in love with him. He didn't expect to hear such a confession and tries to comprehend what he has heard. His expression becomes softer, but still tense. Penelope, gathering all her courage, says loud and clear that she is in love with the prince. She explains that she wanted to comfort him after the recent incident, and so she followed him. Her eyes are full of determination, and her voice is firm. Callisto, slightly surprised, realizes that the girl of the ducal family is indeed in love with him, a bastard of the imperial family. He ponders her words, feeling mixed emotions. He looks at her with renewed interest. Penelope confesses that for her it was love at first sight. She recalls their first meeting at the banquet to celebrate his return. Callisto realizes that they barely know each other, but her words resonate in his heart. Callisto, trying to understand what it was that attracted Penelope to him, asks her a direct question. Penelope, slightly embarrassed, begins to think about her feelings. She searches for words to describe exactly what attracted her to the first prince. Penelope realizes that her feelings for Callisto are deep and sincere. She looks at him fondly, trying to express all the love and admiration she feels. The prince realizes her sincerity, and something new and beautiful begins to bud between them. Penelope, the girl with pink hair, hears a compliment about her beautiful face. She responds sarcastically by saying that if her charm lies only in her face, it is sad. She expects deeper recognition and is surprised by the superficial words. Callisto, the first prince, tries to remedy the situation, adding that he admires her bravery and swordsmanship. However, Penelope is not pleased and finds his compliments too trite, expecting something more unique and sincere from him. Callisto is dissatisfied with her response, but decides to let Penelope live this time. He warns her that next time she must give a detailed answer as to why and how she fell in love with him, hinting at the seriousness of his intentions and further trials. Penelope is shocked by Callisto's words and does not know how to react. She realizes that her life now depends on her ability to convince the prince of her feelings. Penelope feels the tension building and fears for their next encounter. Callisto ends the conversation, allowing Penelope to leave. She leaves him deep in thought about what lies ahead of her. Penelope is tormented by thoughts of not being able to return to her normal student life if she can't deal with her current situation. Penelope realizes that she has no choice but to pursue one of the possible endings with one of the men. She realizes that any wrong action could derail all her efforts and ruin her. Penelope feels a deep sense of injustice, wondering why she must die trying to please people she doesn't even know. Her thoughts are filled with fear and despair at the unknown future. Penelope cries as she realizes the gravity of her situation. She realizes that she does not want to die and that she must find a way to survive. Her tears speak of the internal struggle and fears she is experiencing. Penelope, through her tears, decides that she must escape before Callisto comes back and kills her. She feels cornered, but is willing to fight for her life despite the obstacles. Penelope apologizes to someone and decides to run away to avoid seeing Callisto and save her life. Her decision to run away becomes the only way out of the situation, giving her hope for salvation. Penelope, frightened and worried, screams and begs to be let go, but Winter, the white-haired mage, asks what happened to her. She struggles, pushing him away and screaming her fear of dying, her hands shaking, tears streaming down her cheeks. Winter tries to calm her down, but Penelope continues to scream, repeating that she doesn't want to die. He calls out to her, trying to get her attention and bring her back to reality, but the girl is still in a panic. Winter, concerned about her condition, gently asks if she's okay. His eyes are full of sympathy and concern for her well-being. He tries to understand what has happened and how he can help. Penelope, sobbing and breathing heavily, subsides. Winter whispers soothing words to her, assuring her that no harm will come to her. His voice sounds soft and reassuring, trying to help her cope with her emotions. The thought pops into Penelope's mind that the man is Winter Burlandy, Margrave and mage. His face seems familiar, and she recalls his reputation and the power that accompanies his name. Her hand feels the warmth of his touch, which she finds unexpected and soothing. This warm touch brings a confidence and peace to her mind that she hasn't felt in a long time. Penelope realizes that her stalker is not Winter, and relief comes over her. She wipes away her tears and gathers her strength, trying to make sense of what has happened. Winter stays by her side the whole time. She decides she wants to go home immediately, not wanting to stay here a second longer. Penelope apologizes to Winter for her behavior, explaining that she was scared and panicked. Winter asks her to pretend that nothing happened. He is concerned about her condition and insists that she let him help her. However, Penelope firmly decides to leave, not wanting to attract any more attention. He points out her bleeding and pallor, offering to take her to a doctor, but Penelope insists on returning to the banquet hall. Winter, realizing her stubbornness, gives her something to take with her just in case. Penelope, having received the bandage, presses it to the wound to stop the bleeding. She knows it will help reduce the pain and prevent further damage. Penelope thanks Winter for his help and promises to return the bandage to him, but he replies that it is not necessary. His concern for her is noticeable, and she feels grateful. Winter looks into Penelope's eyes and says that he hopes to see no more sadness in them. He gently touches her face, promising that the next time they meet will be more joyful. The protagonist, while in a flashback from a past life, sees Winter and feels unwell. She decides to return home to recover and deal with the swelling emotions. The main character's brothers, sitting around the table, discuss her return. They are worried, noticing that she looks tired and exhausted. One of the brothers asks her what happened. The protagonist tries to explain that she has seen Penelope and her suffering. The brothers listen anxiously to her story, trying to figure out how they can help her. Penelope recalls her past mistakes and regrets. Her heart fills with sadness, but she knows she must move on and cope to find her place in the world. The men who beat the girl discuss the consequences of their actions. They are afraid that her brothers will find out and take revenge. One of them tries to convince the others that her brothers hate her and will not interfere. The protagonist returns home and meets her brothers. They notice her tearful eyes and start asking about what happened. She realizes that she must find the strength to tell them the truth. Seeing her brothers, the protagonist decides to confide in them. She knows that together they will be able to overcome any difficulties and protect her from danger. Their support gives her hope for a better future. The girl with black hair was lying on the ground when a young man came up to her and asked what happened to her. She replied that she had just fallen, but the guy noticed the bruises on her and started demanding an explanation, clearly concerned about her condition. He continued to insist, demanding the truth about how she got the bruises. The girl repeated that nothing had happened, but there was a note of desperation in her voice and a plea for him to stop asking questions. Her agitation increased and she began to cry out why he even cared about her condition. She reiterated that nothing had happened, but clearly didn't want to tell him what had actually happened. The guy revealed that he had found everyone involved in her beatings and beat them to a pulp. He was determined to protect her and prevent similar incidents in the future. The heroine asked how she looked in the eyes of those who had beaten her that they had decided to attack her. Her sadness and frustration was evident. The young man assured her that it wouldn't happen again. She thanked her older brother, though bitterness was audible in her voice. Perhaps she didn't want someone to interfere in her life in this way, but she still acknowledged his help. The conversation moved to another scene where other characters were discussing the girl's condition. One of them said that if something happened to her, not only would they be hurt, but so would the crazy bastard, the crown prince. She woke up, and the first thing she saw was a blurry silhouette. Someone asked if she was awake. Questions started popping up in the heroine's mind about who it was, what was going on around her. She recognized her other brother who was leaning over her. Words of hatred resounded in her head. She confessed that she hated him more than he could imagine, expressing her deep feelings. Penelope sits on the bed, looking wistfully out the window. Her long pink hair flows over her shoulders, giving the impression of fragility and vulnerability. Light streams through the window, illuminating her silhouette and giving the room an air of morning freshness and silence. Emily cautiously enters the room and, noticing Penelope's condition, anxiously asks how she is feeling. Penelope replies that she is fine, but her appearance betrays the underlying worry evident in her eyes and face. Upon hearing Penelope's words, Emily expresses her relief, admitting that she has been on pins and needles worrying about her mistress for the past 4 days. She adds that Penelope's entire family has also been worried sick, especially the first young master. Penelope is surprised to learn that her condition has caused her loved one such anxiety. Emily assures her that the first young master was very pale when he brought her home in his arms, emphasizing the seriousness of her situation. Penelope, still not fully believing what she's heard, clarifies if Emily is talking about her older brother. Emily confirms that his lordship has summoned all the talented physicians in the capital so that they can help Penelope as soon as possible, without wasting a moment. Emily continues the story by mentioning that Fennel, the head butler, had great difficulty stopping the second young master from storming the imperial palace in an attempt to protect Penelope and her interests. This shows how concerned everyone was about her condition. Penelope is inwardly surprised, thinking that Emily is exaggerating. She can't believe that her condition could have caused such a violent reaction, and wonders what really happened that could have caused such strong emotions from everyone. Emily shares that she has never seen her mistress in such a state before, and was very afraid that something serious could happen to Penelope. She feels genuine concern and worry as she recalls how hard it has been for her all these days. Penelope, feeling guilt and inner turmoil, admits that she should have been hurt. Emily immediately objects, asking her not to say such things, showing her sincere devotion and desire to protect her from any negative thoughts. The emotional scene ends with Penelope realizing how dear she is to her loved ones and feeling the inner support and care they give her. This situation makes her rethink her role and importance in her family's life. Emily reflects on her uneasy relationship with Penelope despite spending many years together. She feels guilt and worries about her mistress. Penelope, recently in pain, is surprised to realize that she feels better. Emily, worried, immediately decides to inform the Duke of her improvement. Penelope, finally feeling alive, relaxes in bed. Emily, serving tea, is relieved to see her mistress in better condition. Penelope wonders why she's bandaged so tightly, as if she broke her neck. Thoughts of recent events and worries begin to bother her. Penelope learns that Fennel, the head butler, has come to see her. She is alarmed by this visit and begins to wonder why he has come. Emily informs her that the Duke has summoned her, and Penelope realizes that her father wants to speak to her. Her thoughts are cut short at not understanding why the summons. Penelope thinks that Fennel could not have sent someone else in his place when it comes to the Duke's orders. She wonders what the conversation will be about. Penelope worries that she has once again created a ruckus in the palace. Thinking back on all her actions, she realizes that this could affect her adopted life. Fennel, apparently expecting a tense conversation, suggests that Penelope follow him. Penelope is surprised that the butler is walking behind her. Penelope, still pondering the challenge, senses that this is something important. Her heart fills with anxiety and anticipation of the upcoming conversation with her father. Fennel, the gray-haired butler, is outraged that the servant dares to walk ahead of his mistress, implying a breach of etiquette. Penelope is surprised, not understanding why her servant is behaving so disrespectfully. Penelope reflects on the butler's strange behavior, feeling uncomfortable with the situation. She asks him to go ahead to rectify the situation and set an example of proper behavior. The next morning, the servants greet Penelope with smiles and politeness, wishing her a good morning. The atmosphere becomes friendlier and calmer, which calms her down a bit. The other servants ask Penelope if she's feeling better after yesterday's incident. Their caring attitude helps her to relax a little and feel supported. Penelope, still feeling awkward, wonders why everyone around her is acting so strangely. She realizes that something has changed in their attitude towards her. The butler informs her that Lady Penelope has come to see the Lord. Penelope feels the tension, anticipating her conversation with her father, and prepares herself for the important dialogue. Fennel opens the door and invites Penelope in. He maintains a stern and formal tone, emphasizing the importance of the moment. Penelope steps inside with excitement. Penelope is surprised at the change in the butler's appearance and behavior, wondering if he has been trained in etiquette. Her suspicions grow, increasing her nervousness before meeting her father. Penelope's father meets her in his sumptuous room. He looks serious and focused, ready for the important conversation that must take place between them. Penelope interrupts her father, asking to be allowed to speak first. She drops to her knees and declares with determination that she takes full responsibility for what has happened, feeling the weight of her words. Penelope, even though she was still on probation, caused a scandal at the imperial banquet and dishonored her family's name. She feels guilty and realizes how serious the consequences of her actions could have been for their family's reputation. Penelope's father tells her to stop. He looks at her sternly, but she is determined not to apologize. She declares that she would rather others realize her transgression than beg forgiveness from those she has wronged. With a great sense of guilt, Penelope says that she is willing to accept whatever punishment is meted out to her. Her words are filled with determination and despair as she realizes that her act has had serious consequences. Penelope's father calls her by her full name, and she is surprised to realize that the usual apologies and pleas no longer work. She tensely awaits his next word, her thoughts full of anxiety. Penelope's father orders her to rise from her knees, telling her that the Eckharts never kneel. He asks her not to demean her dignity so easily, reminding her of the pride and strength of their lineage. Her father goes on to say that as long as she carries the Eckhart family name, no one can force her to kneel. He even says that even if one of the higher dignitaries orders her to do so, she must remain steadfast and unwavering. Penelope realizes the seriousness of his words and immediately rises. Her face expresses a mixture of determination and fear, but she is willing to follow his instructions, even if it requires great effort. Penelope, a little intimidated, asks her father if she's done something wrong. Her father, looking at her sternly but reservedly, says her name, making it clear that his words carry serious weight. Father explains that he didn't call her in to accuse her. He wants to find out what really happened in the palace. Penelope, still feeling guilty, listens to him carefully, ready to tell him the whole truth. Penelope, still not fully understanding, asks why she was summoned then. Her father wants to find out what really happened and hopes she can help him shed some light on the events. Penelope anxiously asks her father to explain what happened between her and the crown prince. She is tense and waits for an answer, clearly not knowing what to expect from further conversation. Her father tells her that Penelope went out for some fresh air and accidentally collided with the crown prince when she took a wrong turn. This accidental collision turned out to be the beginning of an unpleasant incident. The crown prince was in a bad mood, which was the reason for his aggressive behavior. Father mentions that the crown prince's mood was extremely negative at that moment. The father asks a rhetorical question, wondering if the crown prince only cut Penelope's cheek because of his bad mood. He clearly doubts that the reason was so simple. His father assumes that the crown prince had another reason for attacking Penelope and resents his behavior, calling him a crazy bastard. He tries to understand the crown prince's true motives. Penelope admits that she accidentally got in the way of the crown prince, which may have caused his aggression. Her words reveal that she is trying to find justification for his actions. Her father is concerned about the depth of the wound on Penelope's cheek, and she replies with relief that the wound is not deep. This answer calms him down a bit, but the concern remains. Father suggests using this incident against the crown prince to hold him accountable for his actions. He emphasizes that Penelope is important to the Eckhart family and should not be allowed to go unpunished. Her father explains that the Eckhart family always remains neutral, and Penelope is surprised by this fact. She admits that she knew nothing about it, which makes her wonder about family matters. Meanwhile, somewhere in the darkness, an unknown man ponders the position of the crown prince. Despite his status as the direct heir to the emperor, he has few supporters after the death of the empress, and it will be difficult for him to survive without patrons. The second prince's mother took advantage of the crown prince's absence from the battlefield to seize control of half the palace. This tactic allowed her to consolidate her position while the crown prince fought for the throne. When there is no clear challenger to the emperor, times of turmoil begin in the kingdom. Instability and power struggles become inevitable, making life difficult for all nobles and courtiers. Penelope did not realize how difficult the situation was for Callisto. Her thoughts were completely occupied with building a relationship with him, and she did not notice the intrigues and conspiracies around her. Gradually, she began to realize why the second prince had decided to eliminate the crown prince. The crown prince probably put on a show at the banquet to show his power and influence, preventing further assassination attempts. Penelope's father, analyzing the situation, remarked that the more cases like this happened, the harder it would be for people to remain neutral. However, what has happened can be used to one's advantage to strengthen one's position. Seeing a favorable outcome for the family, the father decided to reward Penelope for her contribution. He suggested that she choose a reward, perhaps something special that would please her and emphasize her importance. Penelope, upon hearing the reward offer, was surprised. She expected to be told off, but instead she was offered something of value. This made her think about her actions and their consequences. She decided that she needed to update her closet for the new season, and perhaps she should throw out the old dresses she was bored with. Her father's generosity knew no bounds, and she could afford to update everything. Penelope considered the offer carefully and promised to give an answer later. She needed time to make an informed decision and consider all the possible consequences of her actions. Her relationship with the ducal family had improved, which earned her extra points to her reputation. She wondered if it was really that important to be hurt by the crown prince and what she had done to deserve it. Emily approaches Penelope and, a little embarrassed, begins to explain the situation. Penelope, noticing her confusion, asks again what happened. Emily shows Penelope the beautiful handkerchief she found around her neck when Penelope passed out. She says that she was ordered to throw it away, but decided to wash it and keep it just in case. Penelope, taking the handkerchief in her hands, remembers that it was given to her by Winter Verdandi that night. She wonders how she could have forgotten it. Thanking Emily for her foresight, Penelope thought for a moment. Her gratitude confused the maid a little, and she began to interject, not understanding what she was being thanked for. Penelope senses that something is wrong and asks Emily a question. However, her confusion only causes the maid to ask even more questions. Penelope calls Emily a strange girl. She reflects that she must repay Winter for the kindness he has shown her, as he is a key character. Emily reminds Penelope that it is necessary to invite the jewelers. Penelope agrees, planning to decorate her property for the upcoming festival. Emily remembers the Empire's founding festival the following week and assumes that Penelope wants to order jewelry just for that event. Emily continues, noting that this year's festival will be even bigger since the Crown Prince won the war. Penelope abruptly interrupts her and asks her not to mention the Crown Prince again. Penelope, left alone, thinks about repaying Winter for his kindness and showing her gratitude. She is sure that sooner or later their paths will cross again, as he is a key character in her life. Penelope thought about the upcoming festival that was to be held the following week. She pondered how it would go and what she would have to do. Her eyes read concentration and anticipation. In the game she was studying, the target characters appeared in certain places. This got her thinking about the strategy needed to successfully complete all the levels. Her musings were interrupted by images of Crown Prince Callisto and Marquis Winter, whom she was to meet at the imperial palace. Their appearance was an important milestone in her mission. Now only one character remained, the Knight Iclas. He represented the last and perhaps the most difficult obstacle in Penelope's path to accomplishing her task. Penelope remembered seeing Penelope at the festival. Back then, her goal had been to be with her brothers and enjoy the festival. However, it was more difficult than it seemed at first glance. She admitted to herself that she never got to enjoy the festival because she was constantly getting killed. This made her irritated and frustrated, but she wasn't going to give up. Despite the setbacks, the encounter during the festival still happened. This made her continue to fight and look for new ways to succeed in her mission. After meeting Callisto, Penelope realized that if she couldn't even try to die, she had to reach the ending as soon as possible to escape from this cursed place. To do so, she needed to win the sympathy of the easiest target, Eaclus. This became her new task, which she intended to accomplish at any cost. Penelope searches for a loophole in the wall, realizing that there must be a hidden path here somewhere. She resolutely examines the dense thicket at the base of the old tree, hoping to find a path. She ponders the fact that she must hurry to get to the festival, but the sheer size of the Duke's estate creates an obstacle. Her determination is reflected in the focused expression on her face. Penelope asks Emily to bring her a bookmark for her book. Emily silently complies with the request, somewhat confused and concerned. When Penelope notices Emily's absence, she becomes concerned. Her thoughts are gripped with anxiety for the faithful maid who has always been there for her. Derek, who has suddenly appeared, approaches Penelope to ask if she is feeling better. His concern is evident in his eyes. Penelope, flustered, exclaims that everything is fine and she doesn't need to get up. She tries to show calm despite her inner turmoil. Derek, holding a tray of food, offers to return, but Penelope insists that everything is fine. He clarifies if she needs food. Derek explains that he brought the food himself since he needs to talk to Penelope. She is confused and asks what exactly the conversation is about. Derek looks at her seriously and informs her that he wants to discuss the events that happened in the courtyard. Penelope realizes that the conversation is about recent problems. Penelope feels guilty about the trouble that happened because of her. She apologizes to Derek, who, despite everything, is not going to punish her. Derek, with a serious expression on his face, informs Penelope that he wants to discuss something important. This causes her surprise and bewilderment, as she did not expect such a turn in the conversation. Penelope interjects, "Isn't that what Derek is talking about?" Her stunned expression is evident in her look and posture, but she tries to understand exactly what he wants to tell her. Derek, after hesitating a bit, asks why she is calling him Young Duke again, showing that he doesn't like it. Penelope is confused, not knowing how to properly respond. Penelope, still in a state of confusion, listens intently to Derek. She begins to realize that the conversation is taking an unexpected turn that could greatly affect their relationship. Derek admits that he has been looking for Penelope to give her the pink handkerchief. He says that she can't go around in bandages all the time, showing concern for her appearance and health. Penelope is surprised to learn that Derek is talking about the handkerchief Winter gave her. She begins to understand why Derek ordered Emily to throw it away, feeling internally conflicted. Derek reminds Penelope that her reputation is already ruined, and she can't use things that belong to another man. He also emphasizes that she must remember her family name. Penelope thanks Derek for returning the handkerchief, though her feelings are mixed. She appreciates his concern, but also feels pressured by his demands and expectations. Penelope examines the handkerchief, realizing that it looks expensive and feels good to the touch. Her thoughts of the gift from Winter and Derek's reaction fill her head. She realizes that although the handkerchief was not specially wrapped, it is a gift. This realization makes her think about her feelings and how to handle the situation while maintaining respect for both Derek and Winter. Penelope promises to handle the mysterious object with care, earning the respect of young Duke Derek. Her eyes sparkle with determination as she realizes the responsibility that lies upon her. This promise gives her a mixture of trepidation and confidence. Suddenly, she notices the expression on Derek's face has changed, and his sympathy begins to fade. Her heart clenches at the sudden feeling that she is losing his trust. She tries to understand exactly what has happened and why his attitude has changed so drastically. Derek seemingly decides to leave after remembering important business. Penelope feels a growing unease and doesn't understand what caused his sudden departure. She is left alone with questions that keep her on her mind, and it is up to her to make sense of the situation. Her thoughts keep returning to what happened. Penelope tries to understand what is wrong with the game she is involved in. She is plagued by doubt and anxiety. She feels out of place and wonders what is happening to the sympathy of the brothers. She feels a strange sense that something is going wrong. Penelope holds an object in her hands that only heightens her suspicions. Her thoughts center on the fact that this may not be the game she thought she was participating in, and this raises even more questions for her. Penelope finds footprints that lead her to a clue. Her heart beats faster as she begins to realize that her guesses may be true. She decides to follow these footprints to find answers to her questions and make sense of what is happening. She discovers that the wall guards are too secure, which causes her to have even more doubts. Penelope wonders why the system doesn't inform her of such things. Her anxiety grows, but she doesn't give up and continues to search for answers. Penelope is glad she found the loophole before the festival started. This small victory gives her hope and confidence in her abilities. She feels that the clue is closer than it seemed, and this gives her the strength to keep moving forward. She notices a hidden letter that may shed some light on what is going on. Her hands shake with excitement as she picks it up. Penelope realizes that the clue is just around the corner and she is ready for the next step. Penelope reads the letter carefully, hoping to find the answers to her questions. Her thoughts focus on each word, and she can feel the big picture slowly beginning to take shape. Penelope thinks she could get permission to attend the festival, but they would never let her go out without security. She decides that she will have to operate secretly to get to the slave auction at night and find Eclis. Penelope ponders that she could have agreed to an escort if she had to go during the day, but she needs night action. She realizes that she will have to go out secretly to avoid the guards and accomplish what she has planned. Reynold, the young duke, is worried about Penelope and questions her about what she is doing. Penelope assures him that she is just out for a walk, but her look betrays an inner tension. The sister notices that the brothers' sympathy grows when they don't see Penelope and wonders if there is some other reason. Reynold warily asks Penelope why she is here and what she is doing. Penelope senses that all efforts to throw off the guards have gone to waste. She says she's just out for a walk, but Reynold doubts and interrogates if that's really the case. The young duke suspects that Penelope deliberately chose a spot near the loophole in the wall. He notices that this is a strange coincidence and tries to figure out what she is planning. Penelope, responding to Reynold's question, claims that she was just returning from the training room. Her explanation sounds plausible, but Reynold is still not completely convinced. She notices that Reynold has a beautiful body and is very handsome himself. Penelope ponders, which is not surprising since he is a character in the Otome game, making him perfect. Reynold, noticing Penelope, asks if she has something to say to him. She hesitates and nervously replies that there is nothing. Her hesitation raises more questions for him. Penelope realizes that her plan is on the verge of failure, but decides to continue despite the odds. She hopes that Eclis will live up to her expectations and that all her efforts will not be in vain. Penelope, while walking through the woods, encounters Reynold, the young duke. He persuades her to abandon her plans, but she decides to continue her walk, saying goodbye to him. Penelope feels internal resistance, but stands firm. Reynold tries to stop her, reminding her of the possible consequences of her actions. Penelope responds by expressing her displeasure, noting that she has many more hardships ahead of her. She mentions how many unpleasant things she has heard from the knights. Penelope continues to explain her position, stating that she had not planned anything bad. She suggests that she get permission and leave the place quietly, avoiding more trouble. Reynold insists, trying to convince her to change her mind. Penelope, however, stubbornly maintains that all is not as it seems. She is annoyed by Reynold's attempts to interfere with her plans and reminds him of her rights. She rejects his advice, emphasizing that her actions should not be restricted. Reynold, recognizing his helplessness, decides not to continue the argument. He walks away, leaving Penelope alone. Penelope realizes that she must handle the situation on her own and not rely on anyone else's help. Suddenly, the system appears with an offer of an unexpected event, a festival date with Reynold. Penelope grudgingly reflects on the fact that she will have to participate in the event with him again, and the prize is only 3%. She resolutely refuses, reminding herself how many times she has already died in the game. Penelope loses hope of successfully completing the quest and flatly refuses to participate in the event, calling Reynold a jerk. Penelope remarks in her heart that Reynold thinks she's doing all this for the fun of the festival. She angrily reflects on his insufferable character and continues on her way, determined not to be influenced by him. Penelope, dressed in a dark robe, stands at an open window waiting for the festival to begin. Her heart beats faster, for the first night of this great event is ahead of her, and she has an important step to take. She's prepared herself carefully, wearing a dark robe so as not to attract attention. Her excitement is palpable in her every move, for Penelope is in poor health, and she fears it will interfere with her plans. She has recently received a generous reward from the Duke for her previous services. This money would be perfect for buying new dresses, but Penelope is forced to use it in a different way. With the money in hand, she decides to go downstairs, staying in the shadows. She needs to be as careful as possible not to give herself away. She's sure that just the second floor will not be an obstacle for her. Penelope checked the route beforehand when she went around the mansion, and now everything should go smoothly. Suddenly her plan starts to come apart at the seams. A rope that is too short makes her wonder how to get down safely without attracting too much attention. Reynold, the young Duke, notices her attempts to escape. He is surprised and outraged that his sister has decided to leave the house in secret. Penelope, barely holding on to the rope, hears her brother's voice. She can't believe he is here and tries to figure out what to do next. Reynold asks what she is doing and why her room is right above his. He is clearly unhappy with her actions. She confesses her intentions to run away from home. Reynold cannot believe this and demands an explanation. Penelope, in a dangerous situation, hears Reynold's voice asking her to let go of the rope and jump down. Despite her fear, she decides to trust him. Penelope is surprised and asks if she is sure Reynold will catch her. Reynold insists that she needs to jump and assures her that he will catch her. Penelope makes up her mind and jumps down. Reynold keeps his promise and catches her, preventing a possible fall. After the successful rescue, Reynold asks Penelope where she was going. She replies that she wanted to go for a walk, but adds that he will tell her father if she talks about walking again. Penelope, disappointed by Reynold's attention, calms down knowing that at least she wasn't caught by someone else. She confesses that she wanted to go to the festival. Reynold wonders why she decided to go to the festival at night. Penelope explains that she has her reasons and that he has nothing to worry about. Reynold insists that going to the festival at night without guards is dangerous. He doesn't understand her boldness and thinks it's unwise. Penelope turns to Reynold and thanks him for his concern, but reminds him that she has her own affairs in which she does not want him to interfere. Reynold nevertheless decides to accompany her, explaining that family members should understand such matters. He wants to show concern as a member of the family. Penelope agrees with his decision, though she is surprised. She realizes that his concern is genuine and agrees to have him accompany her to the festival as a guard. Reynold and Penelope meet at night on the street, where he accuses her of hating him, remembering how she has said this to him more than once. He is clearly hurt and agitated, his voice full of emotion as he tries to understand what has changed. Penelope is surprised by Reynold's sudden suggestion that she not tell her father about their meeting, which makes her wonder about his intentions. She can't understand why he is suddenly so concerned about her reputation and safety. Reynold decides that he will go with Penelope, despite her feelings and objections. He is determined to accompany her to keep her out of trouble and shows determination and persistence in his actions. The system announces a surprise event, a festival date with Reynold, where participants can increase his affection and receive a secret artifact. Penelope is confused. She has an important choice to make. They are approached by Derek, who is surprised to see them together at night. He asks what they are doing at such a late hour, and his voice is full of displeasure and suspicion. His appearance adds tension to the situation. Penelope embarrassedly tries to explain that she wanted to go to the festival, which makes Derek suspicious. She realizes that their plan may cause resentment and more questions. Reynold decides to go with her to make sure she is safe, despite her protests and embarrassment. He's not going to back down and shows his concern for her well-being despite the complications. Derek reminds her of the etiquette rules that an aristocrat must be accompanied by 2 guards and looks at them suspiciously. He decides not to leave them alone to follow the established rules. He decides to join their walk to follow those rules and make sure they are safe. His decision adds an extra layer of security, but also complicates things for everyone involved. The three heroes set off together, determined to stay out of trouble and sort out their relationships at the festival. Each of them has their own reasons and doubts, but they are willing to go through this ordeal together. There's an unexpected event in the system, a festival date with Derek. Participating in this event will increase Derek's likability by 3% and give him a secret artifact. This offer immediately catches Penelope's attention. The festival is fun and lively. Vendors loudly beckon customers to their stalls, offering sweet cookies and souvenirs to commemorate the founding of the empire. The atmosphere is filled with bright lights and joy. Penelope walks through the festival with a disgruntled expression on her face. Derek calls out to her, asking if she wants to walk around the festival. Penelope seems to ponder his suggestion. Upon joining Penelope, Derek and his friend notice that she shows no interest in shopping, which is uncharacteristic of her. They remark that she is usually into jewelry and costume jewelry. Penelope replies that she is already walking around, but clearly her thoughts are somewhere far away. Her lack of interest and silence alarms Derek, who continues to watch her. In fact, Penelope didn't want them to accompany her at all. She feels uncomfortable in their company, which causes her internal discomfort and frustration. Another problem bothering Penelope is that she doesn't know where to find Eclis. This thought keeps her on her toes, and she tries to figure it out despite the noise and merriment around her. Suddenly, her attention is caught by a vendor who calls out to her loudly. He grabs her by the arm and pulls her towards his counter, suddenly and swiftly, causing Penelope to gasp in surprise. On the vendor's counter is beautiful jewelry, glittering under the light of the lanterns. Penelope notices the variety of goods and realizes that the selection here is really good. The vendor welcomes Penelope and her companions, inviting them to examine the exquisite jewelry from the east. Penelope has no time to respond before Derek becomes annoyed at her inattention and demands to make a selection. Penelope, with her long pink hair, examines the jewelry display case. She notices one particularly beautiful piece, even though her jewelry box is already full of jewelry. Her attention is drawn to a gorgeous bracelet that suddenly sparks her intense interest. The salesman admires Penelope's choice and remarks that she has good taste. He tells her that the bracelet took 3 months to make and adds that the center stone is incredibly rare, even for the Orient. His words make the jewelry even more special to Penelope. Penelope notices that the color of the stone in the bracelet matches the color of her hair. She ponders this amazing coincidence, but she is left wondering if this choice was not accidental. She doubts that this is why the bracelet was offered to her. Reynold, a young duke with pink hair, joins Penelope. He looks at the bracelet and decides to buy it for her. Turning to the salesman, Reynold asks how much the piece of jewelry costs, preparing to pay for the purchase. Reynold expresses concern about Penelope's health. He notices that she seems tired lately and asks her if she feels dizzy. He worries if she ever wakes up and doesn't realize who she is or where she is. Penelope, upon reflection, admits to herself that she needs this bracelet for her plans. Her thoughts are filled with determination and a feeling that this item will play an important role in her future actions. She is certain that the bracelet will be an important element of her strategy. Suddenly, Penelope's attention is drawn to a noise outside. She notices a crowd beginning to gather outside. People seem agitated and interested, and Penelope wonders what could be the reason for this gathering. There is a sharp sound that interrupts her musings. Penelope is puzzled and wary, trying to figure out what that sound is. Derek announces that the sound signifies the beginning of the parade. His words cause a wave of excitement among those gathered. Penelope looks at him, realizing that the moment is coming when her plans will begin to come to fruition. Penelope, holding Reynold's hand, felt a wave of warmth and hope. It was an important moment for both of them, for they rarely showed their feelings for each other. Reynold made the request gently, making her heart beat faster. Reynold looked at Penelope with warmth and gratitude. She responded to his gaze with words of gratitude, her eyes shining with sincerity. These brief moments of closeness meant more to her than words could express. Suddenly, Penelope felt the ground go from under her feet. She screamed, calling out to Reynold, who immediately reached out his hand, trying to catch her. But the distance between them increased, and she fell deeper and deeper. Penelope found herself in an unfamiliar place and at a complete loss. She could not understand where she was and what she should do next. Darkness and the unknown surrounded her, filling her heart with anxiety. A system appeared in front of Penelope, informing her that a new episode had begun. She realized that her goal now was to get to the auction house, though she had no idea what awaited her there. There was no choice, so she decided to go ahead. As she walked down the street, Penelope thought about her brothers and how she was afraid she wouldn't be able to achieve her goals because of them. But now everything had changed, and she had a new opportunity. Penelope was glad that her plan had worked, but there was still anxiety inside. She knew that there were many challenges ahead, and she needed to be prepared for anything. Still, she felt a little more confident. As she arrived, she noticed that everyone around her was hiding their faces under masks. This gave what was going on an ominous atmosphere. Penelope realized that her suspicions were correct. At the entrance, she was asked to show an invitation she knew nothing about. Penelope was puzzled, but tried not to give away her confusion, realizing that she had to think of something. The attendant at the entrance informed her that she could not enter without an invitation. This was a private event, only available to invited guests. Penelope realized that she would have to find a way out of this situation. In a darkened room, a man with a mask instead of a face says, "Next!" and a hooded Penelope stands in front of him. Penelope asks him to stop, feeling anxious and unsure. Penelope is holding a golden rose, which symbolizes an invitation. She hopes that it will help her to pass on despite the lack of a formal invitation. She apologizes for forgetting her invitation, but shows the golden rose. The guard, seeing the sign, apologizes and asks her to enter, showing respect for the symbol. Penelope thanks fate for managing to get inside, marveling that even in such a place the name of Eckhart opens doors. She is greeted by a woman who promises to accompany her into the dungeon. Penelope is surprised by the vast space inside the dungeon as she enters. Light and shadows play around, creating a mysterious atmosphere. A man in a mask and cylinder appears on stage, announcing the beginning of the night's performance. His voice sounds confident and mesmerizing, drawing the attention of all the guests. The host says that they have prepared enough goods to satisfy the desires of all present, and that the guests can name a price if they like something and take it for themselves. The hall fills with anticipation and interest. The first to be offered for sale are several young people. The host begins by briefly introducing them, emphasizing their unique characteristics and strengths. The auction starts at 60 gold, then rises to 80 gold, and at the end, one of the guests offers 100 gold. The bidding becomes increasingly tense and gambling. The last young man sold stands on the stage, showing an expression of resignation and hopelessness when the final price is announced. He realizes his fate and resigns himself to it, eliciting sympathy from the audience. Penelope, with pink hair and wearing a black cloak, stands in front of the audience. Her gaze is serious, and she is preparing for an important moment. There is a sense of tension in the audience, and everyone is waiting for the continuation. The host announces that the last lot will now be presented. His words cause a wave of anticipation among the audience, and they begin to anticipate what awaits them. A prisoner is brought on stage, and the host says that this man is from a barbaric country destroyed by the great empire of Yokoi. Chains jingle, and all eyes focus on the captive. The captive walks slowly forward, his body covered in scars. The audience watches his every movement with interest, realizing that before them is a man who has been through many trials. Eaclis, a slave from Delmana, appears before the audience. His appearance causes shock and admiration at the same time. The audience holds its breath, trying to understand what will happen next. The host assures them that everyone has heard of Eaclis, and there is nothing better than to see him with their own eyes. The atmosphere becomes even more tense, and the audience waits for the continuation. The host promises that now the guests will see something special. He prepares the audience for the climax by creating a sense of anticipation and excitement. 3 black wolves enter the stage. Their menacing appearance causes the audience to tremble. Everyone realizes that this is going to be a cruel spectacle. Eaclis is given a wooden sword. His hands and feet are chained. He has no armor and realizes there is little chance of survival. Penelope, watching what is happening, wonders in alarm what she should do. She realizes that if Eaclis were to die, it would be terrible. She hesitates, pondering whether she should step in and save him by buying right now. Penelope is amazed that he was able to fight off the predators with only a wooden sword. This moment makes her wonder about his skill and capabilities. The fight continues, and the hero finds himself in a predicament. The two opponents give him no respite, and Penelope watches his desperate attempt to escape. The man in the cylinder admires his energy and determination, noticing how full of vitality he is despite all the difficulties and dangers he faces. Although the hero causes difficulties, the man in the cylinder assures that they have special safety devices for such occasions, showing that they are prepared for any contingency. The man in the cylinder offers to start the bidding at 500,000 gold, showing his confidence in the high interest in the hero. The auction begins, and the tension rises. The bidding amounts increase: 600,000, 900,000, a million. Penelope is focused and clearly determined to participate in this auction, despite the competition. The man in the cylinder announces 2 million, then 4 million, heightening the drama of the moment and demonstrating the high interest in the hero among the bidders. The bids continue to rise to 6 million, 9 million. The bidders show their license plates, eager to get their hands on the hero at any cost. The auctioneer warns that if there are no more bids, they will stop at the current price. Tension is rising. Everyone is holding their breath, waiting for the next bid. Penelope suddenly raises her sign and announces 100 million, which causes a shock to everyone present. This bid far exceeds all previous bids, showing her determination. The auction announces a bid of 100 million gold, causing astonishment to all present. The atmosphere is heated, the bids are rising, and the tension is growing by the minute. Meanwhile, Penelope, hidden in a dark hood, is not worried about other bids, as she had planned from the beginning to offer 10 times that amount. Her determination is unwavering. She is sure of her intention. For Penelope, her life is at stake, and she is ready to offer any amount, be it 100 million or a billion, just to achieve her goal and secure herself. The final bid of 100 million gold pieces is announced, and the auctioneer prepares to announce the winner. Everyone is frozen in anticipation. The intrigue reaches its peak. There are whispers in the room, discussing how much longer Eichlus will be detained while he is here. Everyone knows that his fate is in Penelope's hands. Penelope does not hesitate to announce that she will pay for her bet with a check written in Duke Eckhart's name, much to the approval of the organizers. The check written in the Duke's name confirms Penelope's identity, and this removes all doubt from those present. They realize that they are dealing with a serious contender. Penelope is given a ring with a precious stone, symbolizing her right to the goods. It is a sign of her power and confirmation that she is the rightful owner. The ring also serves as a magical artifact. When Penelope presses it, the magic from the collar around Eichlus' neck takes effect, paralyzing him and subjecting him to her will. Eichlus, shackled in chains, would have been subjected to more torture had Penelope not intervened. She is grateful that she got there earlier than planned, saving him from a horrible fate. Penelope realizes that magic has been used in the arena, which could be very dangerous. She notices that Eichlus' collar could take his life if magic is used for too long, and warns caution. A man in black with a whip threatens Eichlus. He warns that even for an eminent owner like the honored customer, it will be difficult to handle such a dangerous slave, so he advises her to always carry the ring with her. One of the men is approached with orders to subdue Eichlus immediately. The man is seen wearing a collar on his arm, which could control or even harm the slave. Penelope, observing the situation, is worried that Eichlus may be beaten to death. She is panicked and worried, not knowing what to do to help her slave. Penelope does not like the fact that she has to use the ring, which she hates. She feels a deep disgust at having to use such a cruel measure to control Eichlus. Eichlus, wounded and exhausted, is warned by another man that it is dangerous here, and he should not go near Penelope. Eichlus is at this point weakened and on the verge of consciousness. Penelope asks Eichlus to look at her. She tries to make contact with him despite all the horror and danger that surrounds them. Penelope hopes for some sort of reaction or response from him. Penelope reminds Eichlus that she is his mistress who bought him for 100 million gold pieces. She tries to convey her importance and significance to him, perhaps hoping that this will help him pull himself together. Penelope explains that she did not buy him for such a high price because she wanted to throw money away. This shows her intentions and plans for Eichlus, which are clearly not about simply spending money. She also points out that even mad aristocrats do not spend a fortune on slaves from a defeated country. Penelope emphasizes that Ichlas has no homeland to return to and asks what he would do if he escaped. Penelope looks at Ichlas with disdain, condemning him for not knowing his place. She pushes him violently, demonstrating her superiority and strength, not tolerating disobedience or weakness. She recalls how she saw potential in Ichlas and invested in him. Penelope emphasizes that this is the only thing that binds them together, and now he must live up to her expectations by proving his worth. Penelope warns that if Ichlas fails, she will not hesitate to return him to where she took him from. Strong emotion suffuses her face, and Ichlas realizes the seriousness of her words. Ichlas, not knowing how to react, nods in agreement. Penelope tells him to return home, realizing that time is running out and he must act quickly. She orders Ichlas to be freed from his shackles, leaving only his collar and handcuffs. The servants, despite their doubts, carry out the order, freeing him from the chains. One of the servants removes all of his clothes except his underwear and gives them to Ichlas. He is outraged, thinking it excessive, but realizes it is futile to argue. Ichlas is dressed in minimal clothing, ready to go. Penelope bids farewell to the remaining servants, realizing that their paths are diverging. The two of them are left alone, and Penelope realizes that the journey to the Duke's home will not be an easy one. She begins to ponder how to get to her destination safely and quickly. On the street, Penelope is surrounded by people, one of whom recalls their meeting at a performance. She is nervous, trying to hide her excitement, and denies the acquaintance. Ichlas stands nearby, ready to protect Penelope at any moment. Their surroundings create an atmosphere of tension and anticipation of what will happen next on this dangerous journey. A man in an elegant suit with a face full of indignation asserts his importance by calling himself Chloe. His companion tries to calm him down, reminding him that he must not reveal his name. Penelope, confident and calm, says she wants a slave standing in front of her. Her offer sounds firm, and she looks at the situation with cold calculation. The man with white hair, Ichlas, prepares to intervene, but Penelope stops him by grabbing his arm. She sees this situation as an opportunity to gain his trust and show her ability to protect her subordinates. Chloe is at a loss to remember that he won the bet by offering 100 million gold pieces, but now he does not have the money with him. He tries to justify himself to Penelope, but the latter keeps her cool. Penelope calmly replies that she will pay 10 million today and the remaining 90 million later. She had long planned to spend 10 times the initial bid. Chloe can't believe his ears when Penelope explains that she was willing to offer 1 billion gold pieces to outbid any bid. The slave's final price turns out to be many times the expected amount. Through rage and despair, Chloe demands an explanation as to why Penelope is so persistent and whether she knows who he is. Penelope replies with boldness and confidence that she knows who she is. Suddenly, Chloe decides to use force by striking Penelope. His hand moves swiftly, but this act of aggression does not go unanswered. Ichlas reacts instantly, grabbing Chloe's arm and thwarting his attempt at violence. He looks at Chloe with contempt and cold determination to defend his mistress. Chloe screams in despair, realizing his defeat before the strength and determination of Penelope and her loyal slave Ichlas. He realizes that his attempt at aggression has failed, and he is now completely at their mercy. Ichlas, holding Penelope's hand tightly, is disappointed that he has been captured without handcuffs. At this point, the tension builds, and it is clear that he is ready to resist. Ichlas squeezes his enemy's hand, inflicting pain. His rage is so intense that he threatens to kill anyone who stands in his way. Penelope asks those around her to step back, demonstrating her power and confidence. She realizes that the situation is spiraling out of control. Ichlas realizes that the threat to his life was a grave mistake on the part of his opponents. A determination appears in his eyes to protect his mistress at all costs. His fear of the smell of death becomes palpable. He realizes that the stakes are high and he must act decisively to save himself and Penelope. Against the backdrop of destruction and fallen enemies, Ichlas stands as a grim avenger. His gaze speaks of his willingness to go to the end to protect his principles and mistress. The frightened enemy tries to flee in desperation, but Ichlas will not stop. His enemies realize they made a mistake in confronting him. Penelope realizes that Ichlas has dealt with all the enemies. His strength and loyalty amaze her, and she sees him as a reliable protector. Exhausted but proud, Ichlas asks Penelope to praise him for what he has done. His eyes glow with devotion and his willingness to always be there for her, despite the hardships. Emily and Fennell are alarmed by Lady Penelope's disappearance. They search for her, expressing their concern and bewilderment at her absence last night. Their eyes read anxiety and their voices tremble with excitement. Penelope realizes in despair that she has gotten lost and spent the night outside the manor. She wanted to return home unnoticed, but her plan failed. She realizes that it is morning and the estate is surely in turmoil. Fennell confirms that Penelope's father also knows she is missing. He informs her that the young masters, along with the knights, have been searching for her all night, checking all suspicious people and causing the whole house to go into turmoil. Penelope is shocked that Derek and Reynold immediately went looking for her. She feels that they shouldn't have done that and is worried about their involvement in the event. Fennell insists that Penelope return to the house immediately, expressing her concern for her safety. Emily encourages her to do so, but Penelope does not respond to their urging. A mysterious young man named Iklis appears and everyone wonders who he is. His unexpected appearance causes a wave of curiosity and concern among the inhabitants of the estate. Penelope announces that Iklis will live in their mansion and orders that a good room be found for him. She shows determination and confidence in her decision, despite the surprise of those around her. Fennell protests, refusing to let the stranger into the mansion. He cannot accept Penelope's decision and expresses his misgivings about it. His voice is full of distrust and doubt. Penelope is tired of the knight's adventures and insists on doing her own thing. She reminds Fennell of her authority, demanding obedience. Her gaze is full of determination and firmness. She has no intention of backing down. Fennell is forced to obey, recognizing Penelope's authority. He agrees to her order, although his face expresses inner struggle and doubt. Penelope finally gets her way, and Iklis is given a room in the manor. Penelope is pleased that she was able to settle the matter without resorting to threats. In the company of Iklis, she walks thoughtfully down the corridor, realizing the importance of each step. This is a personal victory she is not willing to share with anyone. Suddenly, Reynold appears and calls out loudly to Penelope. She stops, realizing that the situation is escalating, and she can feel the tension in the air. Her heart sinks in anticipation of another scandal. Penelope's father, standing back, orders her to follow him into his office. Penelope senses that the situation is serious and realizes that she is facing a serious conversation on which much depends. Penelope realizes that she is in big trouble. She doesn't know how to apologize to her father this time, and this makes her nervous. Her inner fear and insecurities keep her down. Iklis runs into Reynold and they look at each other tensely. Reynold is trying to figure out who this guy is, and Iklis is ready to defend Penelope if need be. This moment seems like an eternity. Iklis, following the butler, doesn't realize where he's being led or what this place is. He's clearly confused, but decides to trust Penelope and not show his doubts and fears. Penelope makes time for Iklis and admonishes him to behave. She wants to avoid problems, feeling responsible for his fate and realizing that every act is important now. Penelope's father says her name with displeasure. Penelope realizes that she has a serious conversation to have, and his every gesture and word reflects the depth of his frustration and fatigue. In the study, Penelope's father looks distressed and asks for an explanation of what happened. Penelope senses his frustration and prepares for a difficult conversation, realizing that this is her last chance. Penelope apologizes for leaving without saying anything. Her father struggles to hide his irritation, saying that all he's done lately is listen to her apologies. This is their last conversation, which will determine their future. Penelope's father expresses his displeasure, saying that her words are empty and demands an explanation. His anger and frustration are evident in his stern gaze. He believes that his daughter must be honest and open, or she will not earn his trust. Penelope swears that she has done nothing to defame the family name. She is certain of her innocence and is ready to defend her honor. Her voice trembles with tension, but the determination in her eyes remains unwavering. She explains that she stayed up all night to prove her innocence. Penelope's every word is full of pain and despair. She realizes that any misunderstanding could have disastrous consequences for her and the family. Her father, irritated by her excuses, demands to speak bluntly. He shouts that he will not allow her to escape responsibility for her actions. Penelope clenches her hands into fists, realizing that she must find a way to convince him that she is right. Penelope admits that she wanted to attend the festival. She was afraid her father wouldn't let her go out at night, so she decided to sneak out. Her voice is full of regret and shame for her actions. She explains that she felt ill and feared that her father would forbid her to go out. Penelope knows that her actions seem rash, but assures her that she meant no harm. She struggles with feelings of guilt. Penelope reveals that she tried to sneak out, but her brother stopped her. She asked them to keep quiet about it, and they went together. Penelope hoped that everything would go away, but the situation was out of control. She realizes that every move she made was wrong. She recalls how the crowd carried her away and she found herself alone. An aristocrat attacked her, and Penelope was unable to defend herself. The fear and humiliation she experienced left a deep mark on her soul. Penelope realizes that she must find the strength to tell her father everything. Her father is furious and asks who dared to attack his daughter. Penelope tries to remember all the details so she can name her attacker. She feels that this is her only chance to regain her father's trust and defend her honor. Penelope admits her mistakes, hoping for her father's understanding and support. She knows she must be honest and open to earn forgiveness. Penelope is willing to fight for her honor and safety despite the odds. Penelope, excited by the encounter, couldn't realize who was in front of her, but she heard Chloe's name. Her awe of the stranger was heightened by the strong aura emanating from him. This moment was unexpected and full of mystery to her. Penelope's father heard the name and hesitated as he repeated it. The name piqued his interest and perhaps his concern. He tried to remember or figure out who this Chloe was that his daughter spoke of. When Penelope recalled how Ichlis had helped her in her time of need, her father would ask about him, clarifying that he was referring to the boy she had brought. Penelope confirms that Ichlis escaped from a slave auction, a significant moment in their story. Penelope's father, upon hearing about the slaves, realizes that Ichlis is an aristocrat from the conquered country of Esmond. These revelations open up new facets of their relationship and lead them to a deeper understanding of what is happening around them. Penelope has made a decision not to turn her back on the man who saved her life. She decides to become his savior, feeling that it is her duty and responsibility. This decision gives birth to a deep determination and sense of duty within her. Penelope explains that she used the money to buy the slave, as they wanted to take him back because of her. Her motives are clear. She could not allow him to be taken away again. Derek, upon seeing Penelope, furiously asks where she's been. His eyes are full of worry and anger. He can't hide his concern for her and her actions. Penelope, falling on her knees in front of her brother, tries to explain the situation. She talks about being with their father, but clearly feels pressured and afraid of Derek. Derek, covered in tears and sweat, confesses that he has searched the entire capital, including dangerous neighborhoods, to find her. His heart breaks at the thought that she might have been kidnapped. Penelope looks at her brother in surprise, her eyes full of emotion. She cannot understand why he is so worried, but she senses his genuine concern and fear for her. Penelope's father intervenes in the conversation, rebuking her rudeness for interrupting him. His tone is stern, but his eyes hide concern for his daughter. Penelope apologizes to her father, realizing her mistake. She feels guilty for her behavior and tries to rectify the situation, showing her respect for her father. The father, seeing her apology, softens a little. He continues the conversation, but you can hear the relief in his voice. He realizes that Penelope has realized her mistakes. Derek and the father discuss the way forward. The atmosphere in the room is tense. Everyone feels that something important is at stake. The decisions that will be made will change their fates. Penelope tells her father that by buying Ichlis, she could have simply granted him his freedom. But her true intention is to make him a knight. She wants Ichlis to be trained and become a worthy member of their family. Penelope's father is surprised by her proposal to make a slave a knight. He feels that this decision goes against the traditions of their house. Even the Eckhart family hires men from honorable families to run errands, but here we are talking about a slave. Penelope is sure of her decision. She explains that she paid a high price for Ichlis because he is a very good fighter. Even though he is a slave, she sees great potential in him. Derek, her brother, voices his displeasure with the decision. He believes that even commoners from good families are more suitable for such roles than slaves. He is annoyed by Penelope's insistence on the matter. Penelope continues to insist on her own way. She wants Eichlus to be her personal guard. Her argument is based on the fact that she is often left unprotected and needs someone she can trust. Her father offers to choose an official escort from the over 20,000 knights under their command. He doesn't understand why Penelope insists on Ichles specifically when they have so many worthy knights. Penelope explains that she has a bad reputation among the knights, which is why her father did not assign her an escort. She feels that there are none among the knights who are genuinely willing to protect her. Father understands her concerns. He does not want her safety to be in the hands of those who do not wish to protect her. His concern and realization of her vulnerability is evident on his face. Penelope is confident that if she leaves the house, she will not face such problems again. She believes that safety and freedom from intrigue and betrayal await her outside the manor. Her words resonate with her father. He realizes that her determination to leave home is not only a desire for freedom, but also for self-defense. The situation forces him to consider his daughter's safety and well-being. Penelope thought about her future when asked if she was going to leave the house. She confesses that she will soon be an adult and isn't sure what lies ahead. Inwardly, Penelope ponders whether she started this conversation too soon, anxiously contemplating her future. Penelope, realizing the importance of her safety, asked to be allowed to choose her own escort. She explained that it was a vital matter and hoped that she would be allowed to make that decision. Her face expressed anxiety and seriousness, emphasizing the importance of this request. In a tense atmosphere, Penelope turned to her father and older brother, asking for their permission. The men at the table, including Derek, could not refuse her request since yesterday's events were their responsibility. Penelope felt that she had a chance to get her way. Penelope mentally noted that she had managed to keep Ichlis at the mansion, which was more important to her than the guards. Now she needed an excuse to keep him close to her. Her resolve grew, and she looked for ways to carry out her plan. Penelope's father, understanding her condition, suggested she rest and postpone the conversation until morning. He knew Penelope had been through a lot in a day, and so she needed rest. Penelope thanked him, noting that her plan had worked. After the conversation, Penelope hoped that the hard part was over. She reflected that the hardest part was past, and now all she needed to do was act. Her confidence had increased, and she felt ready for new challenges. When the system suggested she repeat the task, Penelope resolutely refused. She resented the weirdness of the system and had no intention of taking the test again. Penelope felt it didn't make sense. Penelope wondered why the system offered this task again. She felt frustration and bewilderment trying to figure out what was wrong with this system. Her thoughts were filled with doubts and questions. Penelope confidently rejected the system's suggestion, thinking it was pointless. She decided that she would not repeat the task despite the reward offered. Her determination prevented her from succumbing to the entreaties. Penelope stared wistfully into the distance, reflecting that the hardest part was over. She believed that she could handle any difficulty now. Her confidence in her abilities and her readiness for new challenges grew with every moment. Penelope stared pensively into the distance, reflecting on how her sympathy for Ichlis had suddenly grown by 3%. Her face reflected a mixture of surprise and confusion as she realized her feelings. Penelope sat on the stairs, tired and immersed in her thoughts. Reynold approached her, indignantly asking why she wasn't answering his questions and looking at her suspiciously. Reynold, seeing Ichlis, grabbed his arm and asked sharply where the man had come from. Emily's maid stood nearby, watching anxiously. Penelope intervened in the conversation, stopping Reynold. He turned to her and asked what she was doing. Penelope calmly explained that she was the one who had brought Ichlis and asked Emily to confirm her words. Reynold, still disbelieving, frowned and again demanded an explanation. Penelope, leaving Ichlis aside, stepped closer to Reynold and gave him a stern look, making it clear that this was not the time to argue. Penelope motioned for Ichlis to leave with her. Reynold became indignant, not realizing what was going on. He was furious when he learned that Penelope had made Ichlis his personal guard. Reynold tried to convince Penelope that it would hurt their reputation. He reminded her that she had picked up Ichlis on the street after she had run away from home. Penelope tiredly replied that she hadn't run away. Penelope, feeling tired, said she would explain everything later. Reynold stayed behind, looking at her departing figure, feeling confused and bewildered. Reynold tried to stop Penelope by grabbing her arm. but she continued walking without turning around, unwilling to engage in further discussion. Eccles stepped between them, protecting Penelope. Reynolds looked at him with surprise and indignation, not understanding how a mere slave dared to interfere in their dispute. With a chuckle, Reynolds suggests that Penelope and Eccles just look at something. Penelope tensely looks at him, clearly preparing herself for an unpleasant conversation. Penelope says firmly that she can't let Eccles go after bringing him into the house with such difficulty. Reynolds is perplexed as to why she needs an escort when she spends her time in her room anyway. Penelope explains that she needs Eccles so that yesterday's events don't happen again. Reynolds sarcastically offers to take an entire army of knights with her, but Penelope objects that she doesn't need knights who despise her. Penelope, gathering her thoughts, tells Reynolds that despite yesterday's good fortune, if it weren't for Eccles, she would be lying dead right now. Reynolds listens carefully to her words, realizing that the situation is more serious than he thought. Reynolds apologizes for the inconvenience, turning to Penelope. She sternly asks how much longer he is going to follow her, showing her displeasure at his presence. Eccles reminds Penelope with a sad expression that she herself told him to prove his worth. Penelope looks at him with a cold stare, letting him know that he has yet to live up to her expectations. Reynolds' older brother appears and announces that the assignment has failed. Penelope sighs heavily, realizing the gravity of the situation and the displeasure of her allies. Reynolds tries to remedy the situation by offering to try the task again, promising to increase Penelope's sympathy and find the secret artifact. Penelope looks at him doubtfully, but decides to give him another chance. Penelope stares intently at Eccles, who is desperate to prove his loyalty and usefulness. He realizes that he needs to put in a lot more effort to earn her trust and respect. With determination in his eyes, Eccles continues to follow Penelope despite her displeasure. He is ready to prove that he can be useful and fulfill all the expectations placed on him. Penelope rebukes Eccles for not daring to enter her room, suggesting that he is afraid she will send him back to the auction house. Her remark causes Eccles to be confused and uncertain. Penelope reflects that Eccles is normally a polite and courteous knight. However, she realizes that his behavior can be unpredictable and dangerous because of his wild instincts. Eccles is not yet tame, and that makes him far more dangerous than one might imagine. He poses a threat that no one suspects. Penelope points out to Eccles that he doesn't have to follow her everywhere, but warns that he will be used as a personal guard if necessary. Eccles silently agrees to this. Penelope orders Eccles to prove his strength to the Duke's men. This is his first task he must accomplish to earn his place in the House of Eckhart. Eccles is confused and asks about the task. Penelope explains that she cannot leave a useless man in the house and that he will have to prove his worth. Penelope worries if she's overreacting, but realizes that she has to be tough so that Eccles realizes the gravity of the situation. Penelope is confident that Eccles won't let her down. She sees potential in him and hopes he is up to the task. She orders her servant, Emily, to show Eccles the place the butler has prepared for him. Eccles obediently follows Emily, promising to do his best not to let Penelope down. Eccles looks at Penelope with determination, realizing that his future depends on his actions. He is willing to do anything to justify his mistress's trust. Penelope still feels fear of Eccles despite everything that has happened. She cannot get rid of this feeling that continues to haunt her. Nevertheless, Penelope is sure that she made the right choice. She hopes that she will have a chance to get out of the situation despite all the difficulties. Eccles is grateful to Penelope for saving his life. He is glad that she was the one who became his mistress, for it saved him from a worse fate. Fortunately, the Duke and Derek did not kick Eccles out of the manor. This allowed Penelope to feel a little more confident and at ease. Penelope did not leave her room for a while under the pretense that she needed to be alone. She really needed some time to herself to process everything that had happened. Emily told Penelope that the Duke was actively searching for clues among the aristocrats of the Empire. At this time, the knights were being treated much more strictly, which was noticeably stressing everyone around them. Penelope noticed that her tastes had changed recently. Emily has noticed that Penelope now enjoys eating spicy food, even though she didn't like it before. Penelope ponders asking for garlic to be added next time. She is enjoying spicy food more and more and wants to experiment with flavors. There's not much time left until the celebration of the founding of the Empire. Penelope prepares for this important event, realizing its significance. Emily suddenly remembers that the butler Fennel asked her to give Penelope something important. The order she placed with the jeweler has finally arrived, and Penelope anticipates what it might be. Penelope, sitting at the table, remembers when they called the jewelers before the festival. She looks pensive, contemplating an important question. Her gaze is off to the side. A glimmer of memory can be seen in her eyes. Penelope decides that she needs to think again about all the details of the upcoming event. She asks her to bring her something, and Emily agrees to run the errand. Penelope's gaze expresses seriousness and determination as she continues to mull over her plans. Emily brings Penelope a pair of precious cufflinks. Penelope admires their beautiful color, her eyes glistening with pleasure. These cufflinks become an important detail of her plan, and she examines them with great care. Emily wonders if Penelope is going to give these precious cufflinks to the Duke. Penelope abruptly refuses. Her answer is emphatic. She knows for a fact that she does not want to use this gift for the Duke. Penelope informs Emily that she needs information about one person. Emily thinks about it and remembers that her roommate used to work on High Street and might know something useful. Penelope hopes so. Emily clarifies what this roommate's name is and learns that her name is Lena. Penelope wonders where Lena is now, her thoughts focused on getting the information she needs. Emily seems a little unsure, but is willing to help. Emily explains that Lena doesn't know how to keep her mouth shut and may be clumsy in completing the task. She offers her services, assuring Penelope that she can handle the assignment better and do it well. Penelope decides to trust Emily as the latter has not been making mistakes lately. Emily is happy to receive this important assignment, and her face lights up with a smile. Penelope is confident that Emily is up to the task. Penelope warns Emily to proceed with caution, as this is a great opportunity that could bring her either good fortune or bad luck. Emily realizes the seriousness of the task and agrees to Penelope's admonition. Emily replies to Penelope that she is willing to follow her instructions and does her best to live up to her trust. She thanks Penelope for the opportunity to prove herself in her new endeavor. Penelope explains to Emily that her probationary period continues. She must find informants after the morning service. Emily wonders exactly who to find and feels a growing excitement. Penelope tells Emily that she will indicate in a letter who needs to be found, and the services must be paid for with jewelry. Emily begins to realize the complexity and importance of the task, trying not to let her mistress down. Penelope clarifies that she is interested in rare information and needs the best informants. She is sure that Emily will cope with this task. Emily assures Penelope of her willingness to fulfill all errands. Penelope instructs Emily to find Yvonne Eckert, who has lost her memory and is living as a commoner. Emily promises to bring Yvonne to the Duke as soon as she finds her. Penelope relies on her maid's loyalty and diligence. Penelope reflects on her mistake. She shouldn't have complained about being too lightly regimented. She realizes that now there is a much more difficult task ahead and caution must be exercised. Penelope is sure that the owner of the handkerchief she pointed out has the information she needs. But, unlike Yvonne, she is not going to look for this person personally. She needs the man to take the initiative himself. Penelope believes that the owner of the handkerchief himself will want to get her attention, which gives her an advantage in finding the information. She is confident that she can use this to her advantage to accomplish what she has planned. Penelope decides that her plan will work and thinks about how important it is to use her resources and skills to accomplish her goal. She hopes that Emily will not let her down and will help her succeed in this risky endeavor. Penelope is alarmed to see the butler Fennel, who brings her news. She asks who it is, to which Fennel replies that he is the butler. Penelope looks tense, realizing that something important has happened. Fennel apologizes for disturbing her and informs Penelope that an invitation has come for her from the palace. Penelope, surprised by this event, interjects where exactly the invitation came from, as she was not expecting anything of the sort. Fennel explains that there will be a banquet on the last day of the Foundation Festival to honor the latest victory in the war. Penelope wonders why she was invited again, since there was already a grand banquet recently to celebrate the Crown Prince's return. Fennel clarifies that this time the banquet will be hosted personally by the Crown Prince. Penelope is stunned by this information and tries to understand why she was chosen for this event. Fennel explains that the Crown Prince sent the invitation just for Penelope, and his lordship doesn't know about it yet. Penelope is stunned, realizing that this invitation could drastically change her life. Penelope recalls the Crown Prince's words the last time they met, when he demanded an explanation of how and why she fell in love with him. Penelope realizes that she will need to give the Crown Prince a detailed answer. Penelope, thinking about the upcoming banquet, feels anxious. She worries that she will once again be the center of attention and does not know how to handle the pressure. Fennell worries about Penelope's health and asks if she has a cold, as she looks ill. Penelope replies that it is the effects of recent events that have affected her greatly. Emily, Penelope's maid, seeing that her mistress is not feeling well, suggests that she call a doctor. Penelope refuses, but Emily continues to insist, realizing that Penelope's condition is of grave concern. Penelope feels herself losing strength and informs Fennell that she is not feeling well. Fennell realizes that he must act quickly and summons help so that Penelope can receive the necessary treatment and recover from the stress she has endured. Penelope, lying on her bed, recognizes that she still needs a doctor to convincingly feign illness. She believes that making a fuss about her illness will help achieve the desired effect. Emily says she went around to a lot of places, but it wasn't until she showed her jewelry box that people started to show interest. This change in attitudes alerted her. Penelope recalls the strange man she met last. He wore a white rabbit mask and sat in a chair with no assistants. This encounter is strongly remembered by her. Emily thanks Penelope for a job well done, despite the heavy rain. She suggests that Penelope rest, and she herself promises to return in the evening with dinner. Penelope stares out the window at the rain, wondering why it has been raining all day. She delves into memories of her childhood, when she felt pathetic listening to the other children's questions about her mother. Walking in the pouring rain, Penelope remembers how nothing has changed since her mom died. These thoughts cause her deep sadness and loneliness. Outside in the rain, the young men are discussing how quickly the weather forecast has changed. One of them suggests starting the car faster, despite the heavy downpour. The other man asks about the lady and is told that she will come home on her own. These words fill Penelope with feelings of rejection and unwantedness. Penelope continues to reflect on her life while standing in the rain. Her thoughts are filled with pain and regret for the past, but she tries to find the strength to move forward. Penelope decides to fight against the odds despite the loneliness and pain. She makes the decision to change her destiny despite all the obstacles. Penelope, looking out the window, realizes that she needs to pull herself together and not waste time watching the rain. Her thoughts are centered on the importance of action, for inaction will lead to unnecessary wasted time. She resolutely picks up her umbrella, thinking that she must get out of the game she finds herself in as soon as possible. Penelope's determination is evident in her every move. Without noticing how she reached the training room, Penelope reflects on her brothers, but realizes that she is not in the mood to see them. She wants to avoid seeing them so as not to distract from her goals. Walking quickly away from the training hall, Penelope worries what she will do if she does meet any of her brothers. She strives to leave discreetly to avoid unwanted conversations. Her thoughts turn to the knights who are practicing even in the rain. Penelope marvels at their perseverance and determination, which makes her even more determined. She hears that the training has gotten tougher and suspects that Eichlus may be there. This arouses her curiosity, and she decides to go and see what is going on in training. Seeing Eichlus at training, Penelope remembers noticing his scars at the auction before. This sight further confirms her assumptions about the harshness of his life. The encounter with Eichlus in the rain becomes symbolic. He, holding his sword, stares at Penelope, creating a tense atmosphere. It is a meeting of two strong personalities. Penelope, looking at Eichlus, notices the rain and realizes that their paths have crossed for a reason. She feels that this moment will be a turning point in their destinies. Eichlus, kneeling in the pouring rain, realizes his mistake and feels sorry for his actions in front of Penelope, his mistress. His face full of remorse, he suffers in silence, unable to find a place for himself from guilt. With pain and humility in his eyes, he asks for punishment, showing that he is ready to suffer any punishment for his behavior. His voice trembles, and the raindrops of rain mingle with the tears streaming down his face. Penelope, holding her stick, looks at him with sympathy and understanding. Her inner turmoil is conveyed in her gaze. She realizes that Eichlus is suffering as much as she is. She reflects on the fact that if this was a game, she would have died by now. and she would have to go through this moment over and over again until she found the right way out. Her thoughts are muddled and complicated. Penelope ponders what it would be like for an aristocrat who lost everything and became a slave to bow down to the arrogant girl who bought him with money. Her gaze is full of pity and sympathy. Eclis, with his head down, is filled with a sense of powerlessness and helplessness. He doesn't know what to say or how to act to earn forgiveness. His body shivers with cold and fear. Penelope remembers the words of comfort she spoke to him earlier. She hopes that these words can comfort and support him in this difficult moment. However, she realizes that she could not have said even that, because by then Iclis would have already killed her. Her thoughts are filled with anxiety and fear for the future. As she approaches Iclis, Penelope notices that someone is probably taunting him, for even the Duke does not force knights to train in such conditions. She marvels at his resilience and determination. She looks at Iclis, who is soaked to the skin, with sympathy as she tries to understand what made him train in such weather. Her concern and attention to him is evident in her gaze and words. Iclis, Penelope's slave, tensely stares ahead, his gaze full of determination. He says that no one forced him, he made the decision on his own. Iclis explains to Penelope that he wants to become her escort as soon as possible, so he trains hard despite the difficulties. The pink-haired Penelope looks at Iclis with fondness and respect. She considers his efforts commendable and deserving of recognition. Penelope promises to reward Iclis for his hard training and offers to make a canopy so that he can train even when it rains. She also wonders if he wants anything else. Penelope remembers that Iclis's sword is broken and says he needs a new one. She promises to get a merchant or blacksmith to do it. Iclis, embarrassed, says he wishes his mistress would come to see him more often, since she hasn't visited him once since she brought him here. He thinks that Penelope has forgotten about him, and that hurts him. His eyes are full of sadness and disappointment. Penelope reflects on her choice to take Iclis. She compares him to a young wolf rather than a pup, believing that passing his branch in the game would be easiest. Iclis, standing in the rain, firmly states that if the mistress wants it, so be it. You can hear the determination and loyalty in his words. Penelope, looking at Iclis with trepidation, warns him that he might get sick staying out in the rain. She worries about his health and tries to protect him. Penelope firmly declared that training was over for the day. She stood confidently under the umbrella in the rain, giving orders to Iclis, who responded obediently, calling her mistress. Penelope contemplated punishment, pondering if anyone around her deserved to be punished for their misdeeds. Her gaze was focused and serious. She could make no mistake about her surroundings. Iclis, standing in front of Penelope, assured her that he meant her no harm. He looked exhausted, but he looked at his mistress with sincerity and respect, realizing the seriousness of her words. Iclis was still on his knees before Penelope, justifying his actions. He was the first and only one she had not forgiven, and it had greatly affected his inner state and attitude. Iclis remained on his knees, devastated and remorseful. Penelope was walking away, leaving him alone. His words echoed in her heart, but she could no longer listen to his voice. Penelope realized that Iclis's branch was not as safe as it seemed. She realized that there are no easy paths in dire situations, and every choice has consequences. Her reflections were deep and full of new discoveries. Penelope decided to meet with Winter as soon as possible. Her decision was firm and unwavering. She felt that this was the only way to solve her problems and find answers to her questions. Emily, Penelope's maid, brought her answers from the people who had responded to her inquiry. Their information could help Penelope in her next steps and make the right decisions. Penelope realized that phrases and guesses were not enough to find the right person. She needed more information to find the aristocrat with the white handkerchief at the second prince's birthday party. Thankfully, Penelope could no longer hear Iclis's voice behind her back. She was immersed in her thoughts, ready for new trials and ready to face future challenges with firm determination. The pink-haired Penelope, dressed in an elegant costume, confidently explains to Emily that it is no longer necessary to ask others. Penelope says that she already has enough information to proceed, to which Emily looks a little confused. Emily, in her maid's uniform, looks at Penelope in surprise. Penelope notices that answers have only been received from 3 of the 4 places Emily has visited. This causes the maid to look confused and slightly worried, but Penelope confidently continues. Penelope brings up the fact that one of the participants still hasn't given an answer. An image of a mysterious rabbit mask appears against a dark background, adding mystery and intrigue to the situation. Penelope decides that it is necessary to figure out who is behind the mask. Penelope is puzzled as to why the masked man did not answer immediately. She assumed that he had already taken the bait. If no answer is forthcoming, Penelope fears that she won't be able to move forward with the case, which causes her internal anxiety. Emily, holding the papers in her hands, questions the need to return. Penelope looks at her determinedly, realizing that Emily's actions are important to the success of their plan. Emily is clearly nervous, but willing to carry out her mistress's instructions. Penelope reassures Emily, reminding her how hard she has worked the past few days. This recognition makes Emily feel proud and satisfied. Penelope appreciates her efforts and promises that the labor will not go unnoticed. Penelope offers to take Emily all the gems left in the box as a reward. This unexpected offer causes Emily to be both surprised and delighted. Emily, standing in front of Penelope, says in awe that she will put down the stones now and bring back the box. Penelope is perplexed, asking why the stones are not beautiful enough, and offers to take the gold if they are not suitable. Emily firmly refuses, explaining that she doesn't want the stones or the gold, and tries to say something, but her words remain unintelligible. Penelope looks at Emily interestedly, asking what she wants instead of jewelry. Emily explains that the reward is nice, but she would want something else instead of jewelry. Penelope asks the question with interest to understand her maid's true desire. Penelope promises to return the needle as promised, but Emily says she doesn't need to throw it away. She can keep it. Penelope is perplexed as to what she is getting at. She urges Emily to stop mumbling and finally say what she really wants. Emily plucks up her courage and says that she wants to be Lady Penelope's true maid. Penelope is surprised, asking what a true maid means. Emily explains that she wants Lady Penelope to be able to rely on her completely. Penelope, surprised, clarifies whether Emily really wants to be relied upon. Emily confidently answers in the affirmative. However, Penelope wonders how she can trust Emily, since she has just received praise for an errand she has completed. Emily suddenly realizes that Penelope has praised her for a job well done. She is a little confused by the unexpected praise and doesn't know how to react to it. Penelope continues to look at her with distrust and wariness. Penelope decisively states that Emily is already her maid and she cannot promise more. Emily feels the tension and responsibility, realizing that winning Penelope's trust will not be easy. She accepts the challenge and decides to prove her loyalty by deed. Emily starts working hard to earn Penelope's trust and respect. She completes all her assignments with the utmost diligence, hoping that her efforts will be noticed. Gradually, Penelope begins to see Emily as a reliable and loyal person. Penelope decides to give Emily more responsibility, testing her strength and reliability. Emily, despite the challenges, is up to the task, showing that she can be trusted. Penelope begins to trust her more, seeing her diligence and loyalty. A deep trust and understanding is established between Penelope and Emily. Emily becomes an indispensable helpmate and loyal friend to Penelope, and Penelope finds in her a real support, realizing that she has made the right choice in placing her trust in her. Emily recognizes that she has committed a great sin against Mistress Penelope and has hurt her through her actions. She feels guilty and expresses regret for her past actions that caused harm. Emily continues by saying that she has acted foolishly and rashly all this time. Her actions have hurt Penelope, and she is truly sorry for what she has done, admitting her mistakes to her mistress. Emily realizes why she is not trusted, and it saddens her. She admits her shortcomings and asks for a chance to prove how useful and loyal she can be. Emily begs Penelope to give her a chance to prove her loyalty. She assures her that she will show how useful she can be if given the chance, and asks her mistress to keep the needle. Penelope, taken aback by Emily's insistence, recalls that she had said earlier that Emily was doing well. She questions whether Emily is really sincere in her intentions. Emily, showing determination, asks Penelope to keep the needle. She assures her that if she can't gain her trust, Madame can show the needle to the Duke. Penelope looks thoughtfully at Emily and recalls scenes from the game. She begins to question if this is really one of the scenes or if Emily genuinely wants to be helpful. Penelope ponders Emily's motives, realizing that gaining her favor will not be easy. She thinks that at first Emily was helping for the sake of the needle, but now the situation has changed. Penelope orders Emily to put the gems back in their rightful place, showing that she is beginning to trust her. Emily happily agrees and promises to return soon. Emily, happy, thanks Penelope and promises to make more efforts in the future. Penelope, observing the change in Emily's behavior, reflects that in reality this situation would be impossible. Penelope is convinced that one loyal person is enough for her. The system notes her improved relationship with the people of the ducal household, and her total score reaching 15 points. Penelope worries that without Winter showing up, she won't be able to move forward with the plot. Recalling her encounter with him, she notes that he was the first person she met at the palace. As she ponders what will happen if Winter never shows up, Penelope wonders if she will have to go looking for him herself, as Yvonne did. Suddenly, Penelope is distracted by a strange movement. She turns around and sees someone or something coming quickly through the window, the girl's hair fluttering in the wind. Penelope falls to the ground and sees a small white rabbit in front of her. She looks at it in confusion, wondering who it is and how it got here. The rabbit, as it turns out, just came in through the window. Penelope asks him how he could have done that, since she is on the second floor, and was he really brought in by the wind? Penelope starts talking to the rabbit, laughing at the absurdity of the situation. She wonders if he understands her words and will be able to answer her. Suddenly, the rabbit responds, informing her that her task is complete. If she wants an answer, she must go directly to the Overlord. Penelope listens in amazement to the rabbit, who adds with a serious look that the white rabbit is the Overlord, and it is time for him to leave. The story ends with the rabbit walking away, leaving Penelope in a state of shock and thoughtfulness. She realizes that this strange rabbit has played an important role in her adventure. Penelope, a girl with pink hair, suddenly realized that something strange had happened around her. She looked puzzled and wary, trying to figure out what had happened. She remembered using small animals to communicate to hide her identity. She had thought it was a rather romantic way to communicate, allowing her to remain incognito. However, in the game, it turned out to be impossible to ask the animals to talk to people directly. The answers were displayed in a special window, and it was a bit frustrating for Penelope, making her wonder why no one around her could communicate normally. Penelope pondered on how difficult it could be to find an interlocutor among 5 people who could dialogue normally. She received a long-awaited answer and decided that she had to meet this person despite all the difficulties. The game system suddenly prompted her to start a new episode with the mysterious mage Winter Burdond. Penelope was a bit scared and puzzled, but realized that she had to meet him in order to continue her journey. She decided to trade her handkerchief for some gems in preparation for a secret mission. She needed to wear a mask and cloak to go unnoticed and successfully complete the mission. Penelope entered a room that appeared to be part of the game. On the door was a picture of a white rabbit, which symbolized an important place. She realized that she was in a virtual space and that something important might be hiding here. Once inside, Penelope saw that the room held important information but was empty. This increased her anxiety and curiosity as she expected to meet someone or find something significant. She wondered if the mage had already left, for she had come in just after receiving the message, but found no one. Penelope was puzzled, but determined to continue her search. Despite her disappointment, Penelope continued on her way. She realized that her efforts would not be wasted, even if she had to face the creepy rabbit that turned out to be her companion. Penelope, a girl with pink hair, felt a strong vibration and wondered in amazement if it was an earthquake. However, she quickly realized that if it was an earthquake, the street wouldn't be so quiet, and her anxiety was replaced by curiosity. Penelope looked around and noticed strange lines that resembled a door. She remembered seeing something similar in fantasy movies and wondered if Winter was behind this mysterious door that she hadn't noticed before. A notice suddenly appeared on the system screen for the hidden quest, Mage's Secret Revealed. Penelope was prompted to go inside the mage's secret place, but she felt she'd better not, as she wasn't interested in other people's secrets and possible dangers. When Penelope did decide to enter, she found herself in a spacious room, which surprised her greatly. From the outside, you would never tell that there could be such a huge and imposing place inside. Her surprise was mixed with admiration. Penelope began to ponder the magic of this world, realizing that she had gotten here through the system. Her admiration for the magical atmosphere grew, and she couldn't help but ponder the possibilities and mysteries of this place. As she pondered magic and its amazing manifestations, Penelope could not hide her admiration. She realized that this world was indeed filled with magic, and this discovery filled her heart with awe and anticipation of new wonders. Suddenly, Penelope felt the earthquake again, and her attention was drawn to the sounds coming from the other end of the corridor. Her heart beat faster, and she decided to go to the source of the sounds to find out what was going on. Penelope heard an unfamiliar voice calling her to action. Confusion gripped her as it was not the voice of Winter she expected to hear. Who could it be? Her curiosity intensified. She was even more surprised when she realized she was hearing children's voices. Penelope wondered who it could be and what was going on in this place full of mystery and strangeness. She couldn't believe her ears. She feels that there are more amazing discoveries and adventures ahead of her, which she is ready to face with an open heart and mind. Penelope finds herself in a huge library filled with books and glowing crystals. She looks stunned, her eyes wide open. She quietly utters, "I," unable to contain her surprise. Penelope looks at the two crystals, one pink and one blue, that are displayed in glass cases. She ponders that this place is like a museum, marveling that such artifacts can be found here. In another part of the library, Winter students are cheering. One of them shouts that the edge of the path is finally visible. Everyone rejoices that they have succeeded in overcoming the difficulties and reaching their goal. Her gaze is filled with admiration. Penelope notes how incredibly beautiful it is here, her eyes glistening with delight. She is amazed by the grandeur and magic of this place. The system notifies her that a rare artifact has been found, the relic of the ancient Magi. It was discovered by Winter during an excavation in the north. This artifact may affect Winter's storyline. One of the students warns the others to be more careful, because if they damage the artifact, they will be punished by the Overlord. They realize the gravity of the situation and try to be as careful as possible. Penelope, spreading her arms, stops the students by yelling at them to stop. She wants to prevent a potential disaster and save a valuable artifact from destruction. Penelope tries to direct the students' actions, suggesting they try again and change tactics. She worries that they want to use the same magic again and reminds them that such things should be handled with care, like a child. Penelope explains that she is not an ant but a guest of the Overlord and demands to know who they are and what they are doing in this place. The disciples confess that they are the Overlord's disciples, and one of them chides the other for being careless with his words. The masked disciples refer to Penelope as the noble masked aunt and are surprised at her sudden appearance. One of them asks who she is, as he did not expect to see her here. Winter students, all wearing animal masks, were confronted with the prohibition against having guests. They confusedly explained that they were just trying to break the ice when Penelope, a girl with pink hair, entered and asked how they got here and if they were close to their teacher. Penelope noticed that the children were often like rat poison, hinting at their mischief. She began asking them about their relationship with their lord, clearly unhappy with what was going on and wanting to understand their motives. Abruptly cutting short the students' fiddling, Penelope demanded that they stop what they were doing and put away their tools. She explained that they didn't need them now, emphasizing the seriousness of the situation. Penelope pointed out that the students had nearly destroyed a rare artifact, making them realize how close they were to disaster. Her words emphasized the importance of mindfulness and responsibility in magical actions. The students embarrassedly admitted that they had tried to break the ice as their teacher had taught them. They explained that they had no special tools and it was the teacher who gave them the hammer and peg for this task. The students added that the ice was so strong that they could not just break it. They noted that magic makes the ice even stronger, which is why it is so hard to break without much effort. Penelope demanded that the students give her the tools. She was determined to solve the problem herself, showing that her knowledge and experience could do the job better. Demonstrating her skill, Penelope easily broke off a piece of ice, and the students watched her actions admiringly. She explained that, once broken off, the ice chunk recovers much more slowly. Penelope explained in detail how to safely retrieve the artifact. She insisted that magic should not be used to make the task easier and recommended that the ice chunks be carefully chipped away using heated water. She indicated that students could use magic to heat the water to simplify the process. Penelope concluded the instruction by emphasizing the importance of care and precision when working with magical artifacts. Penelope, scrutinizing an object through a microscope, recalls her university days. She reflects on how pointless the tasks that now, as it turns out, can be useful in real life seemed to her then. Immersed in her thoughts, Penelope recalls how at university she learned 10 ways of excavating. She never imagined that one day she would be able to put this knowledge into practice in such unexpected circumstances. However, the excavation process proves to be very labor-intensive. Penelope suffers from back pain, but her enthusiastic students cheerfully shout that they are already halfway to success. Despite all the difficulties, Penelope feels proud of the work she has done. She examines the found object and is pleased to see that it has not sustained any damage. With a proud smile on her face, Penelope praises her students for a job well done. They happily acknowledge her credit, emphasizing that it was all made possible by her hints and guidance. The students gratefully call her auntie, but Penelope protests indignantly, reminding them that she is not an auntie at all, but their mentor and teacher. Suddenly, Penelope notices a mysterious masked man and wonders who it could be. She senses that he has something to do with magic. Because of the magic, the people around her cannot see the door or go inside. Penelope realizes that she is being hidden by magic and ponders how to use it. Winter appears, who is also wearing a mask. He notices Penelope and assumes that she too is a magician. Penelope realizes that she faces another challenge that requires her knowledge and skills. Penelope finds herself in a difficult situation, thinking that she cannot confess her real goal of completing the quest. Her face expresses anxiety because the situation requires an immediate solution, and any mistakes could lead to unpredictable consequences. Suddenly, Winter appears in front of her wearing a rabbit mask. Penelope ponders whether she should immediately remove the mask and reveal her identity, but she is afraid of the consequences of such a step because Winter's trust may be lost forever. Her anxiety is heightened when Winter begins to lose sympathy for her, which quickly drops from 9% to 4%. Penelope doesn't understand why this is happening, since there were no warnings of punishment, and she begins to panic. The situation escalates when Winter demands an immediate explanation of how Penelope got here. This frightens her even more, and she begins to look for a way out of the situation, coming up with possible explanations and excuses. Winter's students unexpectedly come to the rescue. They cheerfully declare that they are the ones who brought Penelope here, which causes her some relief and hope that the situation can be resolved safely. Winter, surprised by this twist, begins to question the students. They explain that they asked Penelope to help because of her knowledge of relic mining, and it was a decision they made on their own. The apprentices show Winter the recovered relic, proudly stating that thanks to Penelope, they were able to almost complete a task that seemed impossible, and that her help was invaluable and timely. Winter looks at the relic in surprise. The students confirm that the task initially seemed impossible, but that Penelope helped them with hints and information, which was key to their success. Penelope stood on the sidelines observing what was happening. Her involvement proved crucial, and now even Winter recognizes her contribution, realizing that she did help the children and deserves recognition. Winter recognizes the significance of Penelope's help. Everyone now realizes that her actions were important, and she deserves credit for her courage and knowledge that she demonstrated in a difficult moment. Winter apologized to Penelope for his rudeness, explaining that outsiders could not enter the place. He acknowledged that his behavior had been unacceptable and sincerely apologized. Penelope listened to his words in silence, feeling no particular joy at the apology. Penelope was surprised that the target character apologized to her. She felt no joy, even though it was the first apology from someone so important. Her feelings were mixed, and she didn't know how to react to it. Penelope realized that she was only happy because she and Winter had been trying to break the ice together. This realization brought her pain, and she felt pathetic. Her effort seemed like a waste, and she couldn't shake that feeling. Penelope apologized for entering the secret place, not knowing that this place was off limits. Her words were sincere, and she hoped Winter would forgive her for the misunderstanding. Her apology sounded quiet and unsure. Winter motioned for Penelope to leave, as this place was not meant for talking. He wanted to continue the conversation in a more appropriate setting. Penelope felt slightly relieved that their conversation would continue. Penelope felt unwelcome, and the feeling depressed her. She cursed herself for participating in this game and firmly resolved to never participate in a quest again. Her resolve was strong, and she wasn't going to change her mind. The masked children said goodbye to Penelope, wishing her well and promising to play together next time. Their goodbyes were warm and friendly, and Penelope felt slightly comforted by their words. Penelope noticed Winter tightening her defenses. It made her uneasy, and she thought that he needed to protect this place from intruders. Her thoughts centered on his actions and their consequences. Winter thanked Penelope for taking care of the children, but pointed out that it was too late for the reception. He asked her to come back next time. His words were polite but firm, and Penelope realized that she needed to leave. Penelope realized that Emily was probably already looking for her. She was to meet with the Duke again, and that made her anxious. Her thoughts centered on the upcoming meeting and what it meant to her. Penelope enters the old library, surrounded by shelves of books, and declares that she is not here to place an order. She is here for another reason. She explains that she received a message from the White Rabbit, and that's why she showed up for the meeting. Penelope expected to see someone who could help her with her request. Winter, wearing a rabbit mask, greets her, slightly stunned. Penelope explains that she had to wait a long time and could have left, but saw no point in coming a second time. Winter admits his mistake, apologizing that customers usually come a day or two after receiving a message, and he didn't expect Penelope to come so quickly. Penelope indignantly asks if aristocrats really do this usually, feeling resentful and unhappy about the situation. She recalls how she ran impetuously to find the man she encountered in the courtyard, and now feels ashamed of her haste. Penelope offers to pretend that no request was made to avoid embarrassment. Winter, however, insists that he cannot let her go with nothing, given her honorable act toward the children. He asks Penelope to give him a chance to win back her trust, not wanting her to leave disappointed. Penelope agrees, but indicates that she wants to hear his response to her request. She insists that she needs to at least hear his response to the inquiry to know whether it's worth it to continue working with him. Penelope expresses her desire to regain her lost trust, and Winter promises not to let her down, assuring her that he appreciates her nobility and is willing to cooperate. Winter, wearing a rabbit mask, reports that no one has been able to leave the place after seeing the secret hideout. Penelope realizes that this means she will have to be killed, which makes her uneasy. She asks a question, implying that he would be willing to do such a thing. Winter, surprised by this reaction, assures Penelope that murder is a crime. He has no intention of harming her. This causes the girl to be slightly confused and somewhat relieved. Winter explains that he uses a memory wipe spell that affects the body severely. This causes the person to fall into a deep sleep and cannot leave the place on their own. Penelope suddenly changes the subject, stating that her tea is too hot, which seems like an attempt to evade a serious conversation. Winter continues that he should have erased Penelope's memory as well, but he can't do that after how rudely he treated her today. He emphasizes that the most important quality of a ruler is trusting his customers, and this makes him question his actions. Winter asks Penelope to keep the place he saw today a secret. He promises to give her any information she wishes in exchange. This offer greatly surprises the girl. Penelope thinks that it is quite a disadvantageous offer for Winter to give away valuable information for free. She realizes that the secret place is really important to him, since he is willing to make such sacrifices. Winter confirms her hunch, asking her to keep what she saw a secret. He adds that because of his mistake today, he cannot erase her memory as he had originally planned. This shows his growing sense of responsibility to Penelope. Penelope realizes that her life was actually hanging in the balance. She realizes that Winter could have easily erased her memory, but chose a different path by showing kindness and trust, which impresses her deeply. Winter explains that trusting customers is the chief virtue of a ruler. He admits that if he erased Penelope's memory, he would have to pretend that the request was never received, which is unacceptable to him. Penelope, shocked by this turn of events, realizes the importance of secrecy. She realizes that Winter is willing to share any information with her to keep the secret place safe, and this makes her feel grateful and responsible. Winter explains to Penelope that the children he is talking about are orphans with mage blood. He rescued them from an anti-magic order that is dedicated to fishing out mages and destroying them. Penelope, shocked by what she hears, wonders if there really was such a complicated story at play that she didn't even know about. Penelope wonders what this anti-magic order is and why they are hunting mages. She can't believe that the game had such a deep and complex storyline and feels stunned by the facts revealed to her. Winter explains that in the world of Yoki, magic has long been a commodity. But as the magical arts have grown in popularity, a group of people have emerged who want to suppress the mages. They impose practices on the magicians that violate godly doctrines, leading to their persecution. As the popularity of the magical arts has grown, the pressure on mages from the anti-magical order has increased. The imperial house depends on the prophecy that all evil mages must die so that a true emperor chosen by God can appear. This increases the brutality in the treatment of mages. Besides the anti-magic order, there are also pagans in the world who make false claims. Penelope tries to understand the complexity of the situation and realizes that she needs to know more about Layla's divine realm to make sense of what is happening. Winter explains that the remnants of Layla, recently defeated by the Crown Prince's forces, are causing many problems. Although the spreading of their ideas among the aristocrats of the empire is being done in secret, it is creating more difficulties and tension. Penelope is surprised to find that even among the aristocrats there are mages. However, they mostly deal with magical items. Currently, they need mages to get rid of their competitors and capture the market related to magic. Penelope begins to realize that even in the normal mode of the game, Winter was hiding the fact that he was a mage. She had never thought about these plot details and is amazed at how complex and deep the story was. Winter, holding a cup of tea, asks Penelope for a favor. He explains to her that the lives of the children he saved depend on her help. He asks her to keep everything a secret to protect the orphans from the anti-magic order. Winter asks Penelope to keep the secret and not divulge information about the children. He explains that their lives and safety depend on it and hopes for her support and understanding in this difficult situation. The good magician who helps the poor and cares for the orphans of High Alley while walking through the slums meets a poor commoner who is actually the daughter of the Duke. This chance encounter changes the course of their lives. Winter, a kind and caring magician, brings Yvonne to Penelope's coming-of-age ceremony, choosing a day when the fake young Duchess takes Yvonne's place and draws all the attention. This act raises questions from everyone present. Because of Penelope's behavior in heavy mode, everyone begins to hate her. She decides to switch to light mode, hoping that this will change her relationship with others and help her find her way in the world. Penelope realizes that the rumors could ruin her and asks Winter what to do. The magician warns her that even he, her customer, could be in danger from the rumors spreading. He promises to keep her secret. Winter says he will keep quiet to protect them both. Despite everything that happens, they try to support each other and find solutions to all the problems that come their way. Winter tries to give important information, but Penelope interrupts him, saying that she has already gotten all the information she needs from other sources. The mage is surprised, but realizes that the situation has become even more complicated. The mage recognizes that perhaps he is not as normal as the others, and the hidden quest has disrupted all his plans. But he is willing to do whatever it takes to help Penelope and fix the situation, despite all the difficulties. Penelope, a beautiful lady soon to be found in the slums, finds herself at the center of intrigue and conspiracy. She's compared to a rabid Eckhart dog with a bomb in its teeth, which emphasizes her dangerous position. From the beginning, this story has not known the word please. Winter, in warning the fake Duchess, does so without any politeness, emphasizing the seriousness of the situation and her readiness for decisive action. Penelope decides it is time to act. She takes a step towards her future, realizing that only active action will help her change her destiny and gain the respect and recognition of others. Penelope, back home, decides not to use her former name anymore. She recalls the words that her silence has a price. This moment is filled with determination and mystery, making the reader wonder about her past. She hands a small box to a man who has found important information for her. Penelope wants to ask another favor, and this action shows her willingness to go further in her quest. The man asks what exactly he is to give to the man for whom the box is intended. Penelope, keeping the intrigue alive, assures him that the man will understand what the box is about. This moment emphasizes the mystery and importance of the task. A man in a rabbit mask, Winter, appears on the scene and realizes that the handing over of the box is due to gratitude for a past favor. This scene adds a touch of mysticism and intrigue, revealing a piece of their relationship. Penelope, as she leaves the room, says that she is no longer concerned about the rate increase. She thanks for the work she has done, showing her confidence and independence. Winter, when left alone, wants to express his gratitude for taking care of the children. This scene adds depth to his character, showing his caring and humanity. Penelope decides to forget about this episode, admitting her mistake. Winter, on the other hand, states that he is the kind of person who is not used to being in debt. The scene reveals their complex relationship and internal struggle. Penelope, feeling threatened, tries to find out what Winter is going to do. He, on the other hand, reminds her of his magical powers, which adds to the tension and fear. Winter says that if she needs help, she can always come to him. Penelope realizes that his magic makes it easy for him to kill her without leaving a trace. It's a moment of critical tension and desperation. She is rewarded for completing a hidden quest, the magician's help. Penelope realizes that she has discovered an important secret and can now count on Winter's support, which gives her hope and confidence for the future. Penelope notes in despair that her expectations of her meeting with Winter have not been met and expresses her disappointment, believing that the reward for their interaction is insufficient. She decides that she will not meet with him again. Penelope realizes that in this crazy game, survival requires the use of any help. Winter agrees to help her, assuring her that he will come if she needs his help. However, Penelope is certain that she doesn't need any help right now and decides to avoid seeing Winter. She feels that the best solution at this point is to stay away from him. Once outside, Penelope suddenly remembers that she forgot to ask Winter for a carriage. Despair overwhelms her, and she berates herself for her forgetfulness and clumsiness. Penelope decides not to return to Winter lest she appear insolent. She asks that the Duke stay late, hoping she will have time to leave unnoticed. To get home, Penelope decides to go to the main street and catch a kebab. She meets a guard who asks to see identification, which adds to her anxiety. Penelope recalls seeing similar armor and wonders why the guard needs her ID. The guard explains that there are inspections in the city because of the festival to prevent crime. Penelope notices the Eckhart family crest on the guard's armor and realizes that this could be a problem as the knights are commanded by Derek, a young duke. She realizes that if Derek sees her alone at night, she will be in trouble. Penelope ponders why the Eckhart family is handling security at the festival, feeling the tension building. Captain Derek returns and his warriors greet him, reporting that they have worked hard. Derek acknowledges their efforts and expresses his gratitude, emphasizing the importance of their contributions. Meanwhile, Penelope, lurking around the corner, nervously observes what is happening. She worries that Derek might recognize her, for to him she has always been indifferent. Derek ponders if he can remain unnoticed if he blends in with the crowd. He doesn't want to be recognized and tries to remain inconspicuous. However, Penelope is soon discovered by Derek, who is surprised to recognize her. He can't believe it's really her. Penelope screams for help, hoping to be rescued. Her scream attracts the attention of the masked man, who reacts instantly to the situation. Humbled, Penelope apologizes for having to change her plans and asks for the help she was offered earlier. She hopes that the offer is still valid. The masked man agrees to help, and Penelope immediately decides to take advantage of his offer. She asks him to help her get to Hamilton Street. In the process, she ponders whether Derek really recognized her. If he returns home and doesn't find her there, it will be the end for her. Because of the festival, the street is crowded, and Penelope will have trouble finding the carriage. She is asked why she came alone and without an escort. Penelope explains that they each have their own secrets, and her escort has another job too, to be the main male character. Penelope, holding a magical artifact in her hand, is warned of possible dizziness. The power of the artifact begins to take effect, surrounding her with a magical glow. Her gaze is focused and determined. The game system gives her a mission to enlist the magician's help and travel to Hamilton Street. She realizes the importance of completing this mission to her continued progression in the game. Penelope and Winter are teleported with the help of magic. The girl feels a familiar sensation, as if she has teleported this way before. It is a reminder of the power of Winter's magic and their common goal. Once in the new location, Penelope asks Winter to let go of her hand. She's surprised by the power of his magic and feels slightly confused by the transference, but gradually comes to her senses. After thanking Winter for his help, Penelope learns that the mage was happy to do his duty as well. This act of mutual trust strengthens their alliance, despite their recent doubts after the knife scene. Winter, looking at Penelope through his mask, wonders if she will continue to seek out the Mage Lord. This question makes the girl think about her mission and future plans. Penelope asks if they will meet again, showing her affection and interest in their continued cooperation. Her eyes are determined and hopeful despite the uncertainty of the future. Winter suggests that even in his wildest thoughts, Penelope cannot imagine what he knows about her. He suggests that they continue to pretend until the end so that together they can find Yvonne, their common goal. As they say goodbye, Winter reminds Penelope of the importance of their arrangement. He says that if he provides her with the favor she asked for, she will need to hear important information. Their pact is still in effect. Penelope stares pensively into the distance, wondering if anything will change after this information. Her eyes are full of hope and anxiety, for there are many unknown and important things ahead of her. Penelope looked for a loophole in the wall, full of hope to find a way out. Her heart beat harder with anticipation, and finally she found what she was looking for. However, her joy was short-lived. Her brother Derek was also here, and his sudden appearance took Penelope by surprise. Derek watches Penelope, his gaze full of suspicion and wariness. Penelope tries to remain calm, though her emotions are raging inside her. She realizes that hiding now will not be possible. The situation escalates when Derek recognizes his sister. Penelope feels a cold sweat on her back. Her brother is clearly unhappy with her actions and is ready to take her to task. She'll have to explain herself. Derek, wasting no time, orders Penelope up. Her heart races, but she realizes it's pointless to resist. She has no choice but to follow her brother's instructions. Penelope looks at Derek confused, not understanding how he found her. It seems to her that all her attempts to hide from him have been in vain. She fears that she can't escape punishment now. Derek reminds Penelope of her past misbehavior when she ran away to a festival and caused a lot of trouble. Penelope realizes that she has little chance of forgiveness and her brother is serious. He rebukes Penelope for bringing an unknown slave into the house. She becomes ashamed of her actions and realizes that she is in for a long conversation with her brother. Derek questions what is wrong with Penelope's life that she is running around town again. Penelope feels trapped and realizes that she needs to find an answer to that question. Penelope admits that she's willing to accept whatever punishment her brother assigns. Derek looks at her surprised, not understanding why she agrees to the punishment so easily. He points out that Penelope always talks about punishment as if she enjoys it. Penelope begins to realize that her brother sees something strange and incomprehensible in her behavior. Penelope feels a bad feeling when she sees her brother Derek heading somewhere with a serious face. She is concerned about his intentions and doesn't understand what he is planning. Penelope reflects on how much she hates her fake brother, but doubts whether she can ask him to let her go. She doesn't believe he is capable of pointing a sword at her. Penelope tells herself in despair that she doesn't care what Derek wants to do, since nothing has worked. She thinks he might take her to the Duke to decide her fate. Penelope is convinced that it wouldn't matter to the real Penelope. She thinks that if she were real, she wouldn't worry about the current situation. Penelope notices that they are walking down a path that the Duke usually uses. She doesn't understand why they are here or what her brother is planning. Penelope concludes that Derek is trying to take her to a secluded place. She begins to panic, not knowing what to expect from her brother. Penelope stops Derek and asks what's wrong and why they came here. Derek reminds her that she asked for her own punishment and tells her to silently follow him. Penelope realizes that this place is usually used for dating, but that doesn't matter now. She asks what exactly he is going to do. Penelope asks Derek to wait a bit, but he impatiently demands to know what else she wants. She's clearly trying to buy time or distract him. Penelope admits that it's hard for her to keep up with him when he's walking so fast. She feels tired and exhausted trying to catch up with her brother. Penelope, worried about being ignored, was surprised when Derek slowed down. She hadn't expected such a reaction and felt her heart beat faster. All her thoughts were focused on this moment. Her hope rose when Derek confidently assured her that everything would be okay. Penelope wanted to believe his words and felt her anxiety slowly fade away. Those words gave her hope for a better future. They reached the top, and Penelope, exhausted, offered to rest for a while. Derek, seeing her condition, agreed, though he himself looked tired. He invited her to come closer to continue the conversation. Penelope obediently looked down as Derek asked her to. She hadn't expected to see such a mesmerizing sight and shrieked in surprise. She was overcome with a sense of awe at the sight. A brightly colored city spread out before her eyes, glowing in the evening light. Penelope had never seen it so beautiful. Her heart overflowed with joy and wonder at this unexpected beauty. She realized that she had never seen these places in normal play. The night streets of the capital were new to her, and she felt her heart fill with excitement and curiosity. Always nervous and prepared for the unexpected, this was the first time Penelope felt something completely different. The new feeling filled her with energy and a thirst to explore the world around her. Reflecting on her life, she realized that she had always been too busy to look around. Now that she had the chance to stop and look around, she found so many missed moments. Squeezing Derek's hand, Penelope felt alive, full of strength and gratitude. This moment filled her heart with joy, and the world around her seemed surprisingly real and bright.